So this was a really fun chapter, and in it we're finding out the new bounties of all the Straw Hats, the bounties of Mihawk, Crocodile, and Buggy, as well as how the Cross Guild like fully came to be. So let's get into it because we're going over the entire chapter in this one. The chapter begins in 1000 Sunny. Nami is telling Luffy off for what he did when they left Wano. Luffy, who is locked in a cage with his face covered in bumps and wounds, is introduced with the title One of the Four Emperors. Luffy apologizes to Nami, but she is still enraged. Nami tells him that there is a limit to his stupidity, and this time he exceeded it. Jinbei tries to diffuse tension, saying that everyone is fine, so it's not a big deal, but Nami replies to him furiously, saying, "Stop spoiling him, Jinbei." Jinbei says, "Whoa, Color the Supreme King Haki?" Okay, so a few things to go over here. So Nami is upset at Luffy for leaving Wano recklessly the way that he did in the previous chapter. Like, they were originally supposed to go down like the port in Hakumai that like essentially lowers them down to the ocean. But Kid, overhearing this, was like, "Oh, you're going for the proper port, huh? Good idea. It's so safe and secure. Just right for a couple of losers." And that like angered Luffy and Law, so they kind of just followed Kid's lead, and they all just wound up diving off of like the cliffs of Wano into the ocean. And as for Jinbei saying that Nami has Conqueror's Haki here, I don't think he literally means that. Pretty sure it's just a joke here, or at least I'm pretty sure this is just exclusively a joke. I mean, there is the off chance that Nami randomly has Conqueror's Haki, and if she does, I really wouldn't care. I'd actually kind of be on board with that because why not? We're coming to the end here. Just give them all something stupidly broken that they have no business having anyway, but pretty sure she doesn't have it. Hey, also guys, if you like my One Piece content, please subscribe if you haven't already. It's fine if you don't want to, but if you just need a reminder, here you go. Thanks. Chopper warns Jinbei that he shouldn't get close to Nami when she's angry. Frankie is proud of the Sunny because despite having fallen from that height, it only has a broken yard. So that's interesting. The yard is like the piece that holds up the sail. So I guess this is broken on the Sunny currently, and this is being pointed out for a reason for sure, because I think it's going to come back into play later on. Whenever the Sunny is damaged in this series, it's always had like some kind of significance that comes back, whether it be for like something good or bad. A news coup gives the newspaper to Robin, who tells everyone that their new bounties are out. Sanji runs excitedly to Robin, but he stumbles and the wanted posters fly across the ship. The narrator presents the new bounties of the Emperor, Straw Hat Luffy, and his 9 commanders. So interesting. I don't know if this literally means they're all considered like Yonko commanders, but I guess they are. It's not just like Zoro, Jinbei, and Sanji. It's all of the Straw Hats. I mean, there aren't many members on the crew, so I guess it's fair to say that they're just all commanders in their own right. Chopper's bounty is revealed to be 1,000, and he says, "What? It increased, but that's..." Nami's bounty is 366 million, and she says, "Hundreds of millions, I want them." Brooke's bounty is 383 million, and he just says, "Yo!" Frankie's bounty is 394 million, and he's angry because apparently the Marines changed the picture of his wanted poster for a picture of the Sunny's figurehead. Usopp's new bounty is 500 million, and he says, "It's enough. Please don't increase anymore." Robin's new bounty is 930 million, but apparently she doesn't really have a reaction to it, and she's just giving Chopper some cotton candy. Sanji's new bounty is 1,032 million, and he's lying on the ground furious while he compares his bounty to Zoro's and Jinbei's, because Jinbei's new bounty is 1,100 million, and he asks Sanji what's wrong. And then we see Zoro's new bounty is 1,100 million, 1,100, and Zoro says, "Forget him, don't waste your time with number 4. And then of course we know that Luffy's new bounty is 3 billion at this point, and he's like, "I'm sorry, please let me out, I'm starving." But yeah, these are the new bounties of the Straw Hats, and my initial like excitement and hype has pretty much worn off at this point because we went over all of this stuff in my spoilers video from yesterday. But I'll just say that I'm pretty satisfied with pretty much all of them. I mean, yes, of course they could be higher, but I'm just really appreciative more so of Zoro, Jinbei, and Sanji's bounties, to be honest, because that's what I ultimately really wanted for them coming out of Wano. So just seeing it actually happen is pretty satisfying, and I'm pretty on board with the rest of the Straw Hat bounties as well. Like, I like that Usopp has 500 million. It's in line with what's going on with him overall, especially since his development in Dressrosa. And I like Robin's new bounty because, you know, she's finally getting a bounty that is worthy of her. Of course, not because of her strength, but because of what she represents as a threat to the world government, with her being a survivor of Ohara, all of the insane forbidden knowledge that she has, and of course being able to read the poneglyphs. Cut to the outside of Karai Bari Island. Cross-guild subordinates still cannot believe that their chairman has been able to recruit new pirates like Crocodile and Mihawk. However, things inside the big top are very different. The narrator introduced Buggy as one of the 4 emperors. We see that Buggy is crying and begging for his life. His face is covered in bumps and wounds. He also has some broken teeth. Crocodile and Mihawk are sitting on the chairman's couch. Crocodile is grabbing Buggy's head while Mihawk points Buggy with his sword. Buggy's body is lying on the ground. Buggy begs to forgive him and that he will do anything for them, even lick their shoes. Crocodile and Mihawk talk to him. Crocodile says the Cross Guild is supposed to be an organization founded by me and Hawkeye. Why the heck are you the chairman now, Buggy? And Mihawk says, you're probably the first and last person to become an emperor at the cost of a simple apology. Give up your life if you really mean it. Crocodile says that the word embarrassed is not enough to describe his feelings right now. Buggy asks them again not to kill him, and Mihawk says that's not negotiable. Galdino adulates Crocodile, telling him that it's an honor to work for him again after so long. Buggy confronts Galdino, saying if he's going to betray him, and Galdino tells Buggy that he never became a subordinate. Moji, Kabaji, and Alvida see Buggy is finished, so they think they must follow Crocodile now. A little flashback starts to the moment when the Marines surrounded Paraigana Island where Mihawk lived. Crocodile called Mihawk by Denden Mushi while Mihawk was gathering up his things to switch his base. Crocodile proposed to him that they should work together now that the warlords disappeared. Crocodile said, you know that's not a bad deal. If you and I work together, we will have an organization that even the Marines will watch out for. You're the man they called Marine Hunter. Also, we're very similar when it comes to being careful with whom we trust. And Mihawk doesn't really say anything in return. So that's really interesting. Apparently Mihawk's previous moniker was the Marine Hunter. This obviously is in contrast to Zoro's Pirate Hunter. And also this is showing us like what happened after the Marines went after Mihawk, you know, with the warlord system being abolished, and it was Crocodile who called Mihawk, and they kind of, I guess, both created the Cross Guild, although it's more so implied that Crocodile is kind of like the creator of it, if anything. We see another flashback to the moment when the Marines surrounded Karai Bari Island. While Buggy was preparing his escape plan, Buggy's subordinates informed him that someone was attacking the warships surrounding the island. Buggy came out up the big top and couldn't believe what he saw. Crocodile and Dod's bones were the ones sinking the warship. Buggy's subordinate says that the rumor about Buggy was like Crocodile's big brother was true after all, and that is why Crocodile was now risking his life to save him. Buggy went along, but the reality was very different. Deep inside, Buggy was terrified. Buggy says, he's here to collect my huge debts, but I have nothing to give him. What should I do? He's worse than the Marines. Crocodile met up with Buggy, and Crocodile told him that knowing the kind of person Buggy is, he thought Buggy would just fly away. Buggy tries to make excuses about the money, and he says that things are going well at Buggy's delivery, but he has a lot of workers to feed and it costs a lot of money, not to mention that their main stars, the Giants, had recently quit. Crocodile says, if you can't make enough money, then why don't you consider selling yourselves? Buggy says, don't say such scary things. Aren't we comrades that broke out of Impel Down together, Croc-chan? Crocodile says, then pay me back the money I lent you for that friendship. If not, I'll have to take care of the matter myself. I need all the money in order to establish my new company. Buggy then finds a solution and offers Crocodile to join him and to serve him. Buggy says that he has everything Crocodile needs in his company to get Crocodile's organization up and running faster, and Crocodile can use all for free. Buggy will also pay his debts with his work. So yeah, that's it. That's how Buggy was saved after he was being tracked down by the Marines after the warlords broke up. And it's just a fortunate coincidence, which is like the recurring theme with Buggy. And that's not the only fortunate coincidence for Buggy, as we'll find out later on in this chapter. But yeah, Buggy apparently had a huge debt to Crocodile. Back to the present, Crocodile looks at Buggy very angry as he holds up the Cross Guild poster with his hook. Crocodile says, and after all we talked about, this is the poster you spread out all over the world? You look like someone important on it, Mr. Chairman. Buggy says, it's all a misunderstanding. I really didn't mean it like that. Crocodile says, then what does this mean? And Buggy says, my workers did it. They have a lot of respect for me. I was shocked too. We see a small flashback of what had happened with the posters. Buggy says, what have you done with the posters? And one of Buggy's subordinates says, oh, Chairman, I made you look the coolest of the three. And they have been delivered to every corner of the world. Cut to the Navy headquarters. Brand New is holding an emergency meeting. Brand New talks about about Buggy, saying that he is not only the mastermind behind the Impel Down incident, he was also a member of the Pirate King's crew and has said that he's a pirate that even rivals Red Hair of the Yonko. Brand New adds that Buggy's charisma managed to get Crocodile to help him when the warlords were eliminated. On the other hand, they have been able to confirm the relationship between Crocodile and Mihawk by listening to some conversations between them. Their marine hunting movement has attracted a lot of dangerous people from the underworld, so the Cross Guild is an organization that can be a huge threat to them. So yeah, Buggy's hype here and him becoming a Yonko and being implied to be the leader of the Cross Guild is all just a big funny misunderstanding that was hilariously made by one of Buggy's subordinates who are like in love with him, of course. It ultimately wasn't what Buggy even wanted. Brand New reports the bounties of these 3 pirates, and he says, Sir Crocodile, former member of the warlords and Logia user with great intelligence and charisma, 1,965,000,000. So this is like a massive glow up for Crocodile here, because I'm pretty sure his previous frozen bounty was like 81 million. And I'm loving this personally. I really like Crocodile. I like how he has altered in character since Impel Down, but this raises a huge question. It's like, is he strong enough to have a bounty like this? I mean, he has the notoriety now, of course, but like strength wise, can he like compete against someone with like close to a 200 billion bounty? And to be honest, we don't really know. We've only seen like a few panels of him post time skip, so the verdict is still out on him, to be honest, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is like strong enough to have 1.9 billion. Like maybe he did some training post time skip, or Oda was just like, I'm just gonna make him strong enough because he needs to be this strong at this point in the story, so just deal with it. And if that's the case, I'm on board. Hawkeye Mihawk, also a former member of the Warlords and a swordsman who surpasses Emperor Red Hair in skill. This amount is for the strongest swordsman in the world, 3,590,000,000. So yeah, that's Mihawk's bounty, and it is massive. I think it's like the 6th highest bounty we've ever seen, and Mihawk is certainly worthy of this for sure, especially since he is still currently being considered the strongest swordsman in the world. And when Brand New says he surpasses Shanks at skill here, maybe he just exclusively means like with the sword. I doubt Mihawk is like overall stronger than Shanks, especially in relation to like hockey. But this is just showing us that Mihawk could easily be a Yonko right now if he really wanted to be considered one. Going further into the chapter, we'll get more insight into that. Buggy, the genius jester, in addition to previously mentioned, his power has made possible that Crocodile and Mihawk obey him. He has a bounty of 3,189,000,000. So yeah, this is Buggy's absurdly high bounty, which of course he has no business having, but as we've gone over in this chapter, you know, things are getting out of control at this point. But it also makes you wonder, like, what would Buggy's like real bounty be? And I'm not even sure if it would even crack like 100 million at this point. Back to Karai Bari Island. Crocodile is tired of talking, so he's about to finish off Buggy, who is still begging for his life, but Mihawk starts talking. He says that maybe it's not a bad idea to give Buggy all the glory. Mihawk is not interested in being an emperor. He just wants to live peacefully. Crocodile asks if he's serious, and Mihawk tells Crocodile that they can use Buggy to get all the attention and they can do whatever they want in the shadows. Crocodile tells him that he's right. So that makes sense to me for sure. And we're finding out here that Mihawk, you know, like I said, could easily be a Yonko, but he just doesn't want to be. It actually does really make a lot of sense for them to just have Buggy as the mascot so that they can work in the shadows. So this is great. And also this is just another hilarious, fortunate turn of events for Buggy that allows him to survive. Like at this point, I'm pretty sure Buggy is like a D or something because he has like the luck of the D with all of this stuff. I mean, obviously not every D has like plot armor on their side, but most of them do. Now, if Buggy isn't a D, there's got to be something significant about him that will eventually be revealed. I think most of us feel that way at this point. Cut to Kamabaka Queendom. Leaders of the Revolutionary Army have returned safely. Sabo is not with them, but they inform Koala he is fine. Karasu says that about the incident that happened after they parted ways, he chose to believe in Sabo. Koala approaches Dragon, who says that if Sabo really murdered King Cobra, he won't forgive him no matter what reasons were behind it. Dragon is in front of Kuma and talks to him. Dragon says, "Tell me, Kuma, what did you see?" Kuma says, "As you wish, my lord." It seems that Kuma still acts like a slave. Suddenly, Denden Mushi rings. The Marine headquarters intercept the call to the Kamabaka Queendom. They say it might be the Flame Emperor, so they start to record it. Koala picks up the Denden Mushi. Koala says, "Silence, please. Hi, this is Koala." Sabo says, "It's me, Sabo." End of chapter. So a lot of interesting things here. First of all, Dragon is like not completely dismissing that Sabo killed Cobra, I would assume that he would just think immediately that like, oh, this is just BS. Of course Sabo didn't kill Cobra. Unless there's actually a chance that Sabo did. Because at this point, I guess the hardcores of us, more or less, are led to believe that it was like the Gorosei that killed Cobra, right? And they're framing Sabo for it. But maybe now there's like a chance that Sabo did kill Cobra, but if he did, maybe it was like an accident or something. But I don't know. I just, it's hard to believe that Sabo killed Cobra, but maybe. But the Marines are wiretapping this Dendenmushi and listening to this conversation, which it was, you know, said that they did to Crocodile and Mihawk previously. So the chapter begins with a ship sailing in the seas near Sphinx Island, the homeland of Whitebeard. Marco is leaving the ship and thanks the crew for taking him there. The ship is Red Hair Pirate's ship. Shanks asks Marco if he is going to join them. Marco tells Shanks to stop joking. He's tired of being the babysitter of great pirates. Shanks tells Marco not to exaggerate because he's not a handful. Ben Beckman tells Shanks that he is, while their Nakamas laugh at his captain. Everyone says goodbye to Marco as he flies towards Sphinx Island. We're finding out what happened to Marco after Wano, and apparently he hitched a ride with Shanks. Because, you know, we know that Shanks showed up a couple chapters back to conveniently save everyone from Green Bull, but also we know he was there to promote Film Red, of course. But yeah, if anybody was curious about what was going on with Marco, this is what happened. And he was also even offered to join the Red Hair Pirates. Wouldn't that be insane if he joined them? A flashback begins. It takes place in Wano during the night of the festival after Ryoku's attack. Luffy says, "What? You're not coming with us? Become a pirate." Yamato says, "I'm sure you all noticed too, right? The incident with the forest guy was only resolved thanks to someone's powerful haki. Kaido may have fallen, but now we have all those guys coming after Wano. I cannot allow it. How could I go on adventures while I'm worried about this country? I'm sure we both feel the same way." So the rest of this sequence is essentially just Yamato giving her reason as to why she ultimately didn't really join the Straw Hats. I mean, we saw on the page a couple chapters back that it's because she wanted to relive Oden's adventures, which didn't always start with him just joining Whitebeard and then Roger. He did stuff in Wano too, and it kind of left a sour taste in some of our mouths, but now I guess she's giving more of a better reason, I suppose. And it's that Wano is very vulnerable right now. I mean, we saw Shanks, who was promoting Film Red, had to come and save them from Green Bull. I mean, they could have did it, but it would have been really high diff. So her staying back and not joining the Straw Hats here does make more sense now. Although I'm still not fully on board with how Oda originally handled it. But Marco arrives flying where Luffy and the others are. Marco tells Luffy that a suitable ship appeared near Wano and that he's going to leave the island on it. There's a little Marineford flashback when Marco told Jinbei to take Ace's brother with him after Ace's death. Luffy then thanks Marco for helping him during the Summit War. Marco says, "I'm sure Ace would be very happy if he knew how far you've come." Luffy says, "I see." And Marco flies off Wano with one last message for Luffy. He says, "From now on, this is your era. Go forward with determination." And Luffy says, "Of course, I will do." So that's it. That's finally the big moment between Luffy and Marco. Now, maybe we weren't necessarily like on the surface of our minds waiting for this or expecting it, but it is something that has been lingering for the longest time. These two haven't interacted yet, and it's just finally happening now, which is nice because they do have a lot of connective tissue here and a lot of things that just ultimately needed to be resolved with just a few lines of dialogue. Cut to Amazon Lily, the island of women. Part of the big mountain in the center of the island has been destroyed. Gloriosa says it's the first time that men were able to invade the island so deeply and that the damage in the city is huge. Hancock says that as long as she's on the island, enemies will keep coming. A new flashback begins. It takes place during the Marines' attacks a few weeks ago. Marines managed to break down the city gateway, but Kuja counterattacks. Marines then order to dispatch the new pacifistas called Seraphim to the front line in order to activate the recording cameras too. Vice Admiral Yamakaji says there's no sight of Hancock yet. Okay, a lot to unpack here. So we saw back in chapter 156, when the warlord system was abolished, the Marines started going after pretty much all of the lingering warlords, one of them being Hancock. And we saw that she wasn't really fazed by it, but we're just ultimately coming back to it now and finding out what had happened with it. Now, also we're seeing the new pacifistas that are supposedly going to replace the warlords. This was first talked about in 905 when Fujitora mentioned this to Green Bull. And later on in this summary, we're going to go more into what these things actually actually are and what comprises of them, even more so than what we found out in yesterday's spoilers. And this guy Yamakaji here is actually one of the 5 admirals who showed up to the Buster Call on Nenny's lobby. A little girl with wings and a flame on her back appears in front of Marguerite and Sweet Pea, but they don't want to fight with a kid. The girl, who has star-shaped pupils, shoots a laser with her hand like the pacifistas we already know. Suddenly, Blackbeard's pirate ship appears behind the marine warships. A powerful seaquake pushes warships off Blackbeard's path to Amazon Lily. Marines say the Sea Kings will notice the seaquake. Teach lands on the island with Katarina Devon and Vasco shot, and he says, "Yeah, I'm here for you, Pirate Empress. There's no way I'm going to let your power fall into the Marines' hands." So this is huge. We're finally seeing Blackbeard come back into the story after like over 100 chapters, and not only that, but like he straight up fights in this chapter, like in an extended battle, and we'll get into it. It's like incredible. But also back in chapter 956 as well, that's pretty sure the last time we saw Blackbeard, and he was essentially reacting to the news about the warlord system being abolished, and he said, "Pack your bags onto the ship. Why let the Marines reap the reward when I stand to gain from this?" And for years we had speculated about what this meant. Like, where is he actually going to go? What is he going to get? And we're finding out here he wanted to go to Amazon Lily so that he could get Hancock's devil fruit power for some reason. Katarina says Hancock has a wonderful face, so she wants Hancock's head to make it her treasure. Teach tells Katarina that she can do whatever she wants as long as they can get Hancock's power. Marines ask Vice Admiral Yamakaji to give them the order to attack Blackbeard, but Yamakaji says they must wait for permission from headquarters. Teach attacks the Marines with the Gurgur no Mi power as he tells Boa Hancock to come out. Koby enters with a group of Marines in Kuja City and tries to reason with Boa Hancock. He says, "Hancock-san, we don't want to use violence. If you come with us, I promise we'll leave immediately." So Koby is another character we're coming back to after like 100 chapters, because back, around the 956 area, that's when he was talking to X-Drake, when we found out that they were like a part of SWORD and everything, and X-Drake had asked Koby like, "Hey, where are you right now?" And he said, "I'm on my way to the Island of Women. I'm going to arrest Boa Hancock." And we're finally finding out what had happened with that here. Marigold and Sandersonia tell her sister to stay away because they'll take care of the Marines. However, Hancock heads into battle, and she says, "How ridiculous. I won't be in the hands of either side. I don't want to bow down to anyone." Teach's subordinates ask him to help against a new enemy that appeared. It's a child, but they cannot do anything against him. We see an explosion caused by a laser from the pacifistas, and Teach says, "Huh? It can't be. White hair, brown skin, and black wings?" The kid arrives where Teach is. The kid also has a flame on his back and carries a big sword similar to Mihawk's sword. In fact, the kid looks like Mihawk child version that Oda drew in an SBS. The kid attacks Teach. The cut of his sword parts in 2 pieces the big mountain of the island, and Teach says, "PX, this brat is a pacifista. What the heck is going on?" So this is so crazy. White hair, brown skin, black wings. This means that the new pacifistas are like giant children, and they're also Lunarians as well, but also Mihawk too? Well, not all of them, but this one specifically seems to be like a giant child version of Mihawk, who is also a Lunarian and a pacifista at the same time. So this all kind of makes sense for the most part, because we know that King, seemingly the last of the Lunarians, was experimented on by Vegapunk, maybe, or at least just the world government. And then we saw that Caesar was experimenting on giant children, and Punk Hazard trying to synthesize giants. So that all kind of makes sense. And, the pacifista stuff with the laser technology, that's all Vegapunk stuff as well. But him looking like a child version of Mihawk is a big new element here, which implies that Mihawk was also experimented on at some point by the world government. And this could be why Mihawk was the Marine hunter, maybe because he had a vendetta against them. Now, theoretically, why was Mihawk experimented on by the world government? Well, it could be because of his eyes. I myself and many have speculated that Mihawk has had the perpetual youth surgery performed on him for some reason. I think that's what those spirally eyes indicate. So that could be one of the main reasons as to what's going on with him, if he was experimented on at one point, and why they have his DNA or whatever. And I also really like that Blackbeard is aware of like what the Lunarians are. It's like a super secret rare thing, and only people with like the deep cut inside knowledge and the secrets of the world really know what's going on, like Big Mom, who already knew what King was, and Blackbeard here, who is like historian essentially. The pacifista attacks Teach again, but he stops the sword forward with his hockey-coated arm. Teach uses his powers to absorb all that is around him, and he says black hole. Hancock uses slave arrow attack to turn all the nearby enemies into stone, including Helmeppo and Vice Admiral Yamakaji. Koby orders the pacifistas to stop immediately because it can destroy the stone statues with its lasers. Hancock is about to use Perfume Femur attack, but someone stops her. In an impressive double spread, we see that Teach catches Hancock by the neck, and that he has lifted her from the ground in front of the Kuja pirates and Koby, who is next to them. Teach is using the Yami Yami no Mi's power so that Hancock can't use her powers. We discover their new bounties. So yeah, we found out in Blackbeard's fight against Ace that the Yami Yami no Mi can, like, for some reason cancel out Devil Fruit abilities if you, like, touch them. Hancock's new bounty is 1,659,000,000. So this is fitting for her, I think. She's pretty powerful and has a lot of notoriety. And at this point, everyone who is still relevant kind of needs to have a bounty at least 1 billion, right? Teach's new bounty is 3,996,000,000. So this is warranted for sure. He probably should have always had this bounty because we saw that his original new Yonko bounty was 2.2 billion. But considering everything that's happened post Wano, that is kind of low, especially for a character of his standing. And I think Oda realized that, so maybe that's why he just decided to jump it up to the second current highest bounty in the series, number 1 being Shanks. As Teach says this, we see that Katarina Devon and Vasco Shot have been turned into stone. Koby doesn't know what to do in this situation. Teach tells Hancock that he has been patiently waiting to get her power. Hancock tells him that her powers are built upon her own beauty. If Teach kills her, those who have turned into stone will remain in that state. Even the next user of the Mero Mero no Mi will not be able to reverse it. Koby says that Hancock is a bigger problem than he expected. So yeah, new information on the Mero Mero no Mi here, and I'm not necessarily sure why Teach wants her ability. We're not really finding out in this chapter, and I don't think he wants it for himself because, as she said, the beauty is the big element of making this fruit so broken. And he obviously doesn't have the traditional beauty standard that Hancock does. Teach says this situation looks like it's not going anywhere, right, hero Koby? You did me a favor in the Rocky Port incident. Thanks to you, I was able to defeat Wang Zi and become the boss of the Pirate Island. So that's like a huge reveal here too, because the Rocky Port incident is something that we found out back in chapter 700 when Brand New was revealing the new warlords at the time. And when he introduced Law, he said member of the worst generation and mastermind of the Rocky Port incident, the Surgeon of Death, Trafalgar Law. So apparently Blackbeard was there too, and he defeated Wang Zi in order to become the new boss of the Pirate Island, where his base currently is. And Wang Zi is said to be one of the former members of the Rock's pirates, so I guess he was still alive, and that kind of debunks the theory of him being that big zombie that was a part of Captain John's crew on Thriller Bark. So I guess he's still pretty powerful in his old age, although that's not uncommon for One Piece characters. But this is how Blackbeard knows Koby, because Koby was there as well. Teach says, do you really think if I let her go, she's going to be nice and turn everyone back to normal? And Koby says, if she doesn't turn the soldiers back to normal, it will be a huge problem. Hancock says, I'll do it if you leave the island. And Teach squeezes her neck tighter. And he says, that is a lie. The moment I let you go, you will turn us into stone, and that will be our end, right? To be honest, I think there's no way a man can't be affected by your powers. It's a difficult situation, so I think I should just kill you. Koby says, don't do it. The number of victims will be too high. And then suddenly someone with powerful hockey appears. It's Rayleigh. And he says, I expected the Marines, but even the landscape of the island has been altered. Sorry, Hancock, I'm late. He draws his sword and he says, hey, Whitebeard's apprentice. It's not very mature of me to say it, but I dislike you. Koby and Teach's subordinates freak out, and Rayleigh keeps talking. Hancock, return everyone to normal. I will be the witness. You all will leave the island without making any stupid moves. Back to Amazon Lily in the present, we see Rayleigh didn't arrive to the island alone. Shaki is with him, and we discover her true identity. Shaki says advancements always bring problems. Thanks to Vegapunk's Sea Stone warships, the Calm Belt is no longer a safe place. Empress of Amazon Lily from 2 generations ago, former captain of the Kuja Pirates, Shakuyaku. Random big reveal here. The true identity of Shaki, which is former captain of the Kuja Pirates from 2 generations ago. I'm sure some people theorized this, and if you did, congratulations. But I know that the big popular theory around Shaki was that she was a part of Rox's crew, which also still could be true, but this is like huge, right? Also, it's speculated that Shaki and Rayleigh are the parents of Mihawk. I wonder if that's still going to be revealed or not. Rayleigh says, to be honest, things have not been favorable for us. I'm old now, so I wouldn't have been able to defeat the current Blackbeard. Rayleigh says that it seems that the Marines believe that they will be able to replace the warlords with the new weapons they brought to the island. Marigold and Sandersonian talk about them. At the end of the battle, those two, they didn't have a single scratch, and strangely, one of them looked exactly like our big sister when she was a child. We see a picture of that Seraphim face that the Marines used on Amazon Lily. Indeed, her face is exactly the same as Boa Hancock's face when she was a child, although her pupils are star-shaped. So I think this might give more credence to Mihawk possibly have been experimented on or captured by the world government when he was a child, because we know that that's like Hancock's backstory. She was a slave for a big portion of her life, and you know, they did stuff to her. So it's understandable that they would have her DNA or whatever and synthesize it into what these Seraphim things are. Chapter ends with the Marine ship reporting what happened in Amazon Lily. The Marines say, yes sir, we're landing at Egghead port. Regarding Captain Koby, who has been kidnapped. In the last picture, we see a page of a newspaper with Koby's photo. Narrator says that Captain Koby, the hero of the Rocky Port incident, has been kidnapped by the Yonko Blackbeard and his pirate crew. His current status is unknown. End of chapter. So that's huge. Blackbeard has Koby now, and it's been reported in the newspaper, meaning that Luffy is eventually going to see this, and I think that's like the main reasoning for this, to give Luffy and Blackbeard more of a conflict, which I think is something that they've really been lacking up until this point in the story. They've only talked about 2 or 3, maybe 4 times, you know, throughout the entire series at this point, and Blackbeard hasn't really done enough to Luffy for them to have like this serious blood feud between like the 2 top pirates that are going to be ultimately fighting for the throne. And since Koby is kind of like the pseudo unofficial third brother of Luffy, naturally he's going to go after him, especially if he knows Blackbeard has him. So I think that's probably what this is leading to, or at least the majority of it. Luffy reveals his dream to the crew and we get to see their reaction. Sabo continues his call with Dragon. He mentions being in Lulucia Kingdom and having seen a person sitting on the empty throne. Imu is seen with a map that has Lulucia Kingdom crossed out. In the skies of Lulucia Kingdom, dark clouds start to gather and lightning is striking left and right. An object is seen falling down from the sky onto the country. Lulucia Kingdom is destroyed. The Straw Hats meet Jewelry Bonnie, and with a bounty of 320 million at the end of the chapter. So getting into the new information now, we're finding out that Robin is reading the newspaper, and the crew comes to understand the world situation. Sabo killing Cobra while they were in Wano. Luffy says the newspaper must be wrong because Sabo just wants to free everybody. So yeah, they're finally finding out what has been going on, at least this part of the news, with Sabo allegedly killing Cobra, which we're pretty sure he was framed for. And we expected Luffy to react this way, because how else would he react? I mean, he's not going to react like Dragon did, which was odd, but him saying Sabo just wants to free everybody is of course because he's part of the Revolutionary Army. But it leads him to the next part here where he talks about his dream. And he says, this is the end of my dream. He reveals it to the crew, but we were not shown what his dream is. Allegedly, we're also getting the dialogue here with everyone's reaction to what he had said. I think this is pretty accurate because we did get some leaked panels, and I think that's what they're going off of here. But Zoro says, huh? And Jinbei says, what did you say? Nami says, eh? And Brooke says, yo ho ho, that's so fun. Usopp says, no, you that's. And Frankie says, wah ha ha, that's nice. It's the best. And Sanji says, da ha ha ha, hey Chopper, examine his head. Chopper's like, what? So I think those reactions might possibly give more credence to what we talked about yesterday in regard to Luffy's dream and how it relates to the One Piece. And in case you missed my video, I'll just play that part here again because I think I summed it up more or less pretty good. And I guess the popular opinion on what this could be is that they want to throw the world's biggest party, essentially. And that also kind of lines up with what the actual One Piece itself is. Because the One Piece seems to be just the setting for the world's largest celebration to happen. Like, that's what Laugh Tale, the location itself, is, and the stuff there is for said party. And it kind of lines up with what's been going on with the series, to be honest. Like, the conclusion of every big arc essentially ends with a big party happening, right? Like, that's what Luffy is ultimately always looking forward to. And it seems to be like a big cathartic part of the series as well, and possibly even for Oda. And I also think a big indicator of it is Binks' Sake, the song. That's obviously a recurring thing in the series. We hear it all the time, and it's for a reason. It's because it's kind of telling us what's going on, more or less. Like, Binks' Sake is like the big part of the One Piece. Like, there's apparently going to be like the world's greatest sake there, which was possibly brewed by Joy Boy or something. But the whole thing about delivering Binks' sake is essentially bringing freedom to the world. And that's possibly why Roger named the location Laugh Tale, because like the final lyric in Binks' sake is never ending, ever wandering, our funny traveling tale. So yeah, at least I myself agree with this being the case. So when it's revealed that it's just a location and party favors with a whole bunch of special sake for everyone in the world to come together and enjoy, post them being freed from, 1,000 years of being enslaved by the world government, I can see it causing controversy, and not everyone is going to be on board with it. Luffy is the one who says they must go to Alabasta, and Zoro stops him, saying Vivi is not there. Then Luffy says they must go to Mary Joie, but Zoro stops him again. At the end of that part, Luffy, Nami, Chopper, and Sanji insult Zoro. Okay, so this is pretty exciting because we're seeing like an attempted move from Luffy. We've had no idea where they were going or where they were trying to go post Wano. I guess they're not really going anywhere because he wants to go to Alabasta for Vivi, we can assume, because he just found out that Cobra had died. And Zoro saying that Vivi is not there, I guess is accurate, but to be honest, we the audience don't know where she is at this point. Because in chapter 1054, after we found out from the newspaper that Sabo had allegedly killed Cobra, it also revealed that the Revolutionary Army commanders had taken on Ryokuyu and Fujitora and were eventually able to save Kuma and successfully escape. And after that, it was also revealed that Vivi had disappeared too, which apparently happened around the same time as Cobra's murder. And after that, Kuroma, the Naval Director of Investigation, said they're still investigating the matter, as well as any possible connections between the two. So that makes me think that Sabo and just the Revolutionary Army commanders probably were involved with Vivi escaping here. And I'm assuming that she's not with Sabo, and she may have went with the other commanders who seemingly aren't with Sabo at this point. Not really sure, but I say that because of what we're going to be talking about next here with Sabo and his possible fate. Him maybe being straight up dead here, possibly. Something gigantic appears above the island, above the clouds. We can't see it. It starts shooting laser beams or something similar over the island, producing a huge explosion in the form of a sphere. But the sphere is the product of the impact of the laser beams on the island. So the island in question here is Lulucia Kingdom, but we just talked about going over the initial spoilers, and it's completely being destroyed here. And this is because Sabo was currently there. He told us when he was speaking to Dragon and the Revolutionary Army, but we also found out that the Marines had intercepted this call and were listening to it. And one way or another, Imu is finding out about this, and she's straight up destroying that island because Sabo is aware that Imu was sitting on the empty throne, and that's like a big no-no. No one's supposed to know that. And we also speculated in the previous video about like what is destroying the island here, and I think at this point it's 90% likely that this is Uranus, one of three ancient weapons, one being Poseidon, which is Shirahoshi, which her like unique hockey ability that gives her the ability to communicate with the Sea Kings and stuff. Then Pluton, which is the ancient warship, which is apparently currently under Wano. And then the third one is Uranus, which is very likely to be some kind of like flying ship thing. And that makes sense because Uranus is a Greco-Roman deity who was the personification of the sky. And that fits in with the other ancient weapons because Poseidon's the sea, Pluton is the underworld god or just land or whatever, and then Uranus is the sky. And this is also possibly what Doflamingo was talking about when he mentioned the treasure of Mary Joie and how he could like control the world with it essentially. And the way that this is working kind of lines up with the technology that we saw on Enel's cover story where he goes to the moon. And we've also been speculating for years that we may have even been seeing Uranus in those murals that he looks at. Like this ship looking thing here could be Uranus or like an analog to it, because I do think it's all connected here. Like the technology that is capable of making Uranus is probably the same technology that we see as a part of the moon. And I think it's all coming from aliens ultimately, because I think that Emu is an alien too. We talked about that yesterday as well. And I also think this is where Vegapunk's technology comes from, as well as Dr. Tsukimi. The guy who we saw made the automatas, also a part of Nell's cover story, because they both come from Karakuri Island. So it's possible, like, I don't know, some alien technology fell there and that was like the big catalyst for a lot of Vegapunk's breakthroughs possibly, as well as Dr. Tsukimi maybe. But yeah, this is very likely that, and Emu seems to be in direct control of it because, like I said, she's an alien too. And I'm also sure this was utilized, you know, heavily during the Void Century and all that stuff too, right? Straw Hat crew finds Bonnie some days after the first part of the chapter, the part about Luffy's dream. They find her in the sea. She's in kid form, near a winter island with a very strong climate. In fact, the crew saves her from dying, and this is where the chapter ends. Okay, so interesting. We didn't get this information yesterday. We just know that they came across Bonnie. And like I talked about, the last time we pretty much see Bonnie was when she was at the Reverie, where we can kind of put two and two together and see that she's very likely to be a celestial dragon. So some way or another, she escaped from Merijois and wound up here near a winter island with very strong climate. And maybe this is the next location they're going to. I hope not, because this doesn't sound like Elbaf. Elbaf isn't like a wintry island with very strong climate, although it could be Lodestar. We don't really know anything about that other than its name and that it's the final island. Marine base is located near the island. The Punk Hazard kids, Tashigi, and some SWORD members are there. Helmeppo wants to borrow Seraphims from Vegapunk to save Koby. Okay, so this takes us back to 1059, where we saw Blackbeard invade Amazon Lily in an attempt to take Hancock's Devil Fruit power, but at the same time, Koby was on his way there to arrest her due to the warlord system being abolished. He also brought these Seraphims with him, which are known as the new pacifistas. They're like a fusion of the Punk Hazard kids that we just mentioned in these spoilers, like the giant kids, mixed with Lunarians like King, and two of them have like the traits of Hancock and Mihawk. Rayleigh eventually came to save Hancock from Blackbeard, but Blackbeard wound up just kidnapping Koby instead. And that brings us to where Helmeppo wants to borrow Seraphims from Vegapunk to save Koby, and it's like, maybe Vegapunk would agree to this? Vegapunk's moral compass is still a little ambiguous at this point. Obviously, it's not necessarily on the side of good per se, but it could be left of center. But I could see it maybe at least giving Helmeppo one, since it is being mentioned here, and I don't think it's just going to be thrown away for nothing. But considering that Helmeppo, Tashigi, and the Punk Hazard kids, along with some other SWORD members are there, I wouldn't be surprised if they intermingle with the rest of the cast in this arc. And speaking of them, Luffy, Jinbei, Chopper, and Bonnie are separated from the others. So this is like a dead giveaway that this is like the beginning of the new arc, because like it wouldn't be a One Piece arc if the crew wasn't getting split up, you know what I mean? And it's like, do we really need it at this point? Because the crew was separated for like 8 years or something, right? Up until like we finally got them all together, like right before the raid in Wano. And we had them together for like, I don't know, 2 years and some change maybe, and now they're just being split up again. And it's like, can we just keep them together just for this one arc? And rather than just separating them, just have them stick in their little cliques while all being together, and just have characters interact that normally wouldn't. Like have Luffy and Frankie interacting a lot in this arc or something, or like Zoro and Robin, you know, etc. And then that way you can make it fresh while not having to separate them. And I understand it could be difficult from a writing perspective to keep all of these characters together at all times, but I'm pretty sure Oda could do it if he really wanted to. And as for Bonnie being here, we established that, you know, they saved her at the end of the previous chapter, and I guess she's going to be the new worst generation that's going to bond with Luffy here. Because before we had Luffy, Law, Beji, then Kid, but now we have Bonnie, and it's fine. And, you know, she's probably important because, like I talked about in my previous videos, she's probably a celestial dragon and knows things. At the end of the chapter, a girl appears and claims to be Vegapunk. So here's the big massive reveal. I think we first heard about Vegapunk in chapter 433 from Koby. It's been a very long time since Vegapunk has been introduced for us to finally see him. And in case you just need a refresher on who Vegapunk is, he's essentially like the Tony Stark / Reed Richards / Nathaniel Richards of the One Piece world. Like, he is the ultimate genius. Like, he pretty much knows everything. And one of the super exciting things about this arc is probably going to come towards the end once the Straw Hats finally come face to face face with him, because he's going to spill such massive exposition to not only them, but also the audience, like things that we've been waiting years and years to finally find out. But he's the top scientist of the Marine/world government, and he knows like tons of secrets and applications of sea stones, devil fruits. Obviously, we've seen that he can like replicate them and stuff, and he has, you know, unfathomable technology. We saw that he could do it with the pacifistas as well recently with the Seraphims. I mean, it was stated that his achievements are said to be like at least 500 years ahead of the current technology. And as for it saying a girl appears and claims to be Vegapunk, I think that's accurate with the whole claiming thing here, because Vegapunk is mentioned to be like an old man at least twice in the series from what I remember. And just chronologically, he kind of has to be somewhat of an old man, or at least an adult. I mean, we don't have like an exact date of birth on him, but kind of has to at least be like an adult. Gender still up in the air, even though he's claimed to be a guy. But this could mean that maybe this girl is like an android and he's speaking through her, because that seems likely, right? But also, what if the girl really is Vegapunk, and maybe the old man Vegapunk is like a robot that she's been speaking through? But also that kind of doesn't make sense, because like I said, chronologically, he kind of has to be like an old man or something. Or he could, like, I don't know, transfer his consciousness to another person or something, or maybe this is like a synthetic human, or I don't know. There's so many options here. I think this is more of a red herring, and it'll probably be revealed in the next chapter that this is kind of just like something that he's speaking through rather than just literally it being him. But then again, this is One Piece, and maybe it is Vegapunk, because I don't know, he synthesized a devil fruit and then he did some other stuff, or maybe he altered his own DNA, because it's implied that he's able to do that from what we've seen with the Seraphim. So this could be a mixture of all the Vegapunkery stuff, and then he just, I don't know, one way or another made himself into a little girl. But I digress. I'm very excited about this. I've been waiting for Vegapunk to come into the story simply because of the juicy exposition that he can deliver to us. On the cover of this chapter, we see that Chocolate Town in Totland is covered in ice. And we talked about this yesterday, of course, but it's very likely that Kuzan is behind this, and that also means that Kuzan is in fact the 10th Titanic captain of the Blackbeard pirates. If you like more information on this, please check out my video from yesterday. Bonnie reveals that her father Kuma was made into a weapon by Vegapunk. Yes, that's revealed, and we're going to be talking about that in this chapter because we get the dialogue that reveals this. There are 6 different Vegapunks because of how occupied he is with his research. We're going to go over this. And then CP0 agents are coming to kill Vegapunk. They have Seraphim Kuma with them. So yeah, we're finding out who all of the CP0 agents are, and it's actually who we assumed they would be yesterday. But now let's get into the dialogue in this chapter, because I think the opening sequence here is picking up directly off of the previous chapter, where we saw the portion of the Straw Hats getting introduced to the number 2 version of Vegapunk. So Robin's saying, wait, I've never heard anything about Vegapunk being female. The span of their career doesn't match their apparent age. This is like literally what we were saying like as this was happening. And then Vegapunk 2 says, that's obvious. I'm clearly not Stella, written as real body, pronounced as Stella for some reason. I'm Punk 2. Vegapunk Lilith, written as evil, pronounced as Lilith. We're always tight on money here. Give me your valuables. I'll be done with you. And then Nami says, what are you saying? Such a ridiculous cold sea. If you're going to scoop us out, at least rescue us properly. And then Vegapunk 2 says, I said I didn't rescue you. And then going forward, Addended Mushi is apparently saying this, that Pirate Hunter Zoro, with a 1,111,000,000 bounty, the reason he's so calm is because at that distance, he could kill you in an instant. It's the same for the Devil Child, Nico Robin behind him. But what could they do against this amount of sea beast weapon? And then Vegapunk 2, aka Lilith, says, are those goofishly acting idiots actually a decoy? I let my guard down. And then Zoro says, hey Vegapunk, I've got a request. You okay with that? And then Vegapunk 2 says, strong people like him, Zoro, know who they should defeat first. In this case, Vegapunk Evil/Lilith is the target of Zoro. And then Zoro says, you need to fulfill our request, don't you mind? Now, I don't know what the request is. I think this is being left out of this summary here, but I assume it has something to do with helping the crew more or less. But also going back to what it said in yesterday's spoilers about how there's 6 different Vegapunk android things. Well, apparently all the names of them are revealed here. So Punk 6 is York, which represents greed. Number 5 is Atlas, which represents violence. Number 4 is Pythagoras, which represents wisdom. 3 is Edison, thought and emotion. 2 is Lilith, evil, maliciousness. And 1 is Shaka, which is justice and kindness. And we're gonna get introduced to another one of them in this chapter because we're coming to the Jinbei, Bonnie, and Luffy side of things. And Luffy's like, I passed right through it. It's right there, but I can't grab it. And Chopper's like, I'm way too hungry. And Luffy says, it can't be that we died without realizing it, right? And then Jinbei says, there's no way we've got ghost bodies. That parfait must be a hologram. It's the first time I've seen one. And Luffy's like, what the heck is this? I'll never forgive this. So apparently they're like interacting with other stuff on the island here, and it's like holograms of like food and stuff maybe. Then apparently they run into Punk 6, which as we just went over is York, which represents greed. But in this summary, it's saying that it's actually Punk 5, even though the image is saying 6, but we'll just have to go with it for now. And also this Punk looks like a child version of Yuta for some reason. I don't know if it literally is based off of Yuta, because it's really debatable how canonical Yuta actually is. Yuta, the character from the new One Piece film Red movie. But Jinbei's like, so what are you exactly? And Punk 6 says, I was hired as the humble genius scientist, Dr. Vegapunk. And then everybody's like, huh? And then Bonnie's thinking, liar. What is this thing saying? And then Luffy says, are you Vegapunk? I know that name. Koby mentioned it. So that's really interesting because I think that's the first time that the audience heard Dr. Vegapunk's name. Luffy's referring to after Enies Lobby when he initially met back up with Garp and Koby. This was like chapter 433. And yeah, Koby told him about Vegapunk. And he remembered since then, which was like over 2 years ago at this point. Now, I guess we're going a little forward into the chapter, and Bonnie's revealing that she has been to Egghead Island before. And Luffy's like, you've been here before? And Bonnie says, when I was a kid. It was still a normal lab back then. My father was made into a cyborg by Vegapunk's hands. And Luffy's like, that's so cool. And Bonnie says, by now, he has lost all of his sense of self as a human. He doesn't even know who he is. He's been made into nothing more than a living weapon. Jinbei's like, that's a real pleasant story you told. Bonnie says, yeah, I can't stand for it. And Luffy says, sorry, Boogie. And Bonnie says, it's Bonnie. And Luffy's like, oh, Bonnie. So yeah, we talked about this yesterday. The big reveal that Bonnie is Kuma's daughter. And if you would like more insight into that, please check out my video from yesterday. But now we're finally getting into the CP0 side of things, because it was revealed yesterday that CP0 is coming to Egghead Island to take out Dr. Vegapunk. And we were wondering, like, okay, so who are the CP0 agents going and why are they taking out Vegapunk? And we're seemingly finding out the reason here. Because the agents coming here are Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy. And apparently they also have like a Kuma Seraphim with them. And the Kuma Seraphim has no devil fruit power, which apparently means that Seraphs can't copy Kuma's devil fruit, or maybe just devil fruits in general, possibly. But we're going into CP0's dialogue here, where Lucci's saying, so what are we supposed to do? And Kaku says, listen, Lucci, Vegapunk isn't one person, but he's too genius that he doesn't have time. If you don't have time, you say, I want to borrow someone's hand, right? So he came up with an idea, which him making a clone of 6. And Lucci says, am I being weird, or is it just thinking that there's no way this is true? It's so tiresome handling with a genius. And Stussy says, so we need to bring back this brat to Egghead Island and erase, as in kill, every Vegapunk. That is our mission. And Kaku says the lab is filled with valuable things. Do it while being careful about those. And Lucci says, erasing the world's most useful man, huh? What happened to Lulucia the other day? Something might be linked? And Stussy says, no, people like you who are quick-witted aren't supposed to be prying into stuff, especially you. And Kaku says, tell me about it. Don't involve us into this, Lucci. So yeah, they're coming here to take out Vegapunk, and I guess it's because they think he knows too much. And since they're bringing up Lulucia here, and we saw a couple chapters back that Sabo was talking to the Revolutionary Army, mainly Dragon, and revealed to them that he had saw someone sitting on the empty throne when he was at the reverie in Marijois, you know, which means that he saw Imu, the shadow leader of the world government, something that no one's supposed to know about. And we saw that the world government was tapping that Denden Mushi call, and that eventually led to Imu just like destroying Lulucia with some kind of unknown weapon thing that could fly and shoot down massive laser beams. And we just, you know, assume that that's probably Uranus. And since it's being mentioned here, maybe that means that Vegapunk knows that that was Uranus, or it's something that he created. I think it was more so just that Vegapunk knows that that's Uranus, and maybe he reverse engineered it possibly, or something like that. We also talked about that last week, about how Vegapunk probably came across like alien technology somehow. Maybe he discovered Uranus, I don't know, but they might be killing him here because he knows that Uranus was used to kill Lulucia Kingdom, possibly. And also he already made the Seraphim, so maybe they figured like, okay, he's done everything he needs to do for us, we can just take him out. Even though they're mentioning here that he's such a valuable man, so it's kind of counterintuitive, but I guess it has to do with Lulucia. And I also like how worried they are just simply talking about it, because they know like, hey, don't pry into that stuff, because even we will just get, you know, snuffed out for that. Cover, we see that Cracker is frozen and Brule is crying. Brule says that Pudding has been kidnapped. Okay, so this is already crazy. This goes back to the previous chapter's cover story where we saw that Chocolate Town was completely frozen, and we assumed that, okay, so there's only one person capable of doing that, and it's probably Kuzan. And this also means that it's very likely, not confirmed, we're just speculating, that Kuzan is definitely working with Blackbeard here, and that's why he was sent to Whole Cake. So now it's also kind of being confirmed here that Kuzan is defeating Cracker, and that's understandable because Cracker is really no match for Kuzan, but they're also taking Pudding. And if this is indeed the work of Blackbeard and Kuzan doing it, they're taking Pudding because she's a part of the Third Eye tribe. And it's said that once the Third Eye quote unquote awakens, she basically gets the voice of all things, and therefore she is able to read poneglyphs. And that's going to match up with what we're going to be talking about later. So we'll just put a pin in that for now because I'm pretty sure it's all going to come full circle. Luffy, Chopper, Jinbei, Bonnie changed their clothes with a special Vegapunk machine. Luffy, Chopper, and Bonnie wear futuristic clothes, and Jinbei wears Hawaiian clothes. Yeah, so this goes back to the previous chapter where we saw Luffy's group had met up with like the 5th Vegapunk, like the violence aspect of his personality, I guess. And she was showing them like various machines that she had in that portion of the lab. It was like a food machine, and there's like other stuff too. And apparently there's like a clothes machine here too. They met Kuma, a police robot with a uniform. He's different from the real Kuma. He wears round sunglasses and has robotic shoulders. Kuma attacks them. Luffy is about to punch Kuma, but Bonnie stops him. Bonnie says Kuma is her real father and her only family. We can see an image of younger Kuma holding Bonnie when she was a child. So yeah, I guess Vegapunk has like more versions of Kuma. Like these are like pseudo pacifistas if anything. And also Bonnie is like revealing to Luffy and the rest of them that Kuma is her father. I mean, we found this out in the previous chapter, at least the audience did, but she never really said Kuma. She just said her father was turned into a weapon by Vegapunk, and that's like the whole reason why she came here in the first place, to get revenge on him. But now the crew is finding out like the full truth here. No news about Zoro's group in this chapter, so that's a little disappointing, but it's not really that big of a deal considering what's going to happen afterwards. But the big cliffhanger with Zoro's group in the previous chapter was him saying like, hey Vegapunk, we've got some demands and you're going to listen to that, got it? And then we saw like the Punk 1 version of Vegapunk, Shaka the Good, and he said that's fine, bring him here, I have an interest in that crew. So we're eventually going to see Zoro and then meet up with like the good version of Vegapunk, who actually wants to like talk to them here. So that's important, and we also need to find out what Zoro ultimately wants. So cut to another place. We see that Blackbeard is ambushing Law in the middle of the sea. Blackbeard brings with him Burgess, Van Augur, Doc Q, and Stronger. Stronger is Doc Q's horse. All of them have the power of a devil fruit. All right, so like I said, this is insane. Just everything is changing. We didn't expect this at all. Suddenly, it's just Blackbeard and a portion of his crew going against Law. And it's also being revealed that Van Augur, Doc Q, and Burgess have devil fruits now. I don't know if they always did, but I'm assuming this is kind of new, and we're finding out what they are. So Burgess has the Riki Riki no Mi, which gives him abnormal strength. And I know that doesn't really sound that impressive at first because most of the top tier characters have abnormal strength, but we're gonna find out that it's pretty abnormal. Like it's way stronger than what like the typical strength level that we've seen in the series so far. Like definitely worthy of a devil fruit. Doc Q has the Shiku Shiku no Mi. He can infect people with sickness. Okay, so that's insane. And then Van Augur has the Wapu Wapu no Mi, where he can teleport people. So that's crazy too. And I'm pretty sure he can only like teleport other people, like he can't teleport himself because that'd be too broken. But this is especially powerful if you are on a pretty competent pirate crew, as we're gonna come to see. And then Stronger has the Uma Uma no Mi, Mythical Zoan, Model Pegasus. So Doc Q's horse has a mythical freaking Zoan fruit that turns him into a Pegasus pretty much. And this is similar to what we saw in Skypiea, because Gonfal's bird, Pierre, had the just standard Uma Uma no Mi fruit, like that made him into a horse. But since he was a bird, he kind of cheated and became a Pegasus anyway. But this is like the Mythical Zoan version of that, which is just straight Pegasus. And considering that it's a Mythical Zoan, I'm sure that it has other busted powers too, aside from just being able to fly and have wings, because the Mythical Zoans don't really play by the standard rules of devil fruits, as we've come to find out. Law escapes to a nearby island, but Van Augur teleports Burgess first. Burgess lifts an entire mountain and throws it to Law. So yeah, this is what I was talking about. This Riga Riga no Mi is insane. Like, this is definitely stronger than the, you know, super strength that we've typically seen from characters. So, you know, like Kaido, Big Mom, Zoro, etc. Like, I'm pretty sure they can't throw a freaking mountain here. And I don't know how big it is, and I'm sure it's going to be big enough to make a huge impression as to where, like, okay, this is like strength above the norm here. Like, this is definitely worthy of eating this devil fruit. Q arrives riding stronger. Blackbeard is on top of them both. Q uses his powers to turn Law into a woman for a moment, but Law uses his haki to break Q's disease power. So that's weird. I thought it just said that the Shiku Shiku no Mi can infect people with sickness. This more so sounds like Ivankov's hormone fruit, like changing genders and whatnot. Unless something else is happening here, or this is a translation error. Not really sure. I mean, we'll have to see the page when it eventually comes out, but I don't really know what to make of this. But regardless, Law is just canceling it out with his haki. Law says that a strong haki can nullify devil fruit power. He says too that he learned a lot from the battle against Kaido and Big Mom. Blackbeard appears in front of Law. Blackbeard was wondering which one of the three captains that left Wano will cross paths with him first. In the final page, Blackbeard and Law are ready to fight. Blackbeard says Kaido must have had one of them, so I will take all of your road poneglyph. And Law says, I'm ready. Winner takes all. And that's where the chapter ends. So that is so exciting. Like, oh my god, I can't wait for this. Obviously, on paper, Law is a heavy underdog here. It's very unlikely that he's going to be able to solo Blackbeard, especially with the backup that he has here. And I don't know if the rest of Law's crew is with him, but even if they were, they're not really that much help because they're pretty weak, let's be honest. But yeah, it's really not looking good for Law here. And going back to saying that, you know, Kaido must have had one of them, so I'll take your road poneglyph, he did. Well, technically, at least there was one on Wano, because we saw back in chapter 1055 that Sukiyaki showed Robin and Law where the road poneglyph in Wano was, and he did get a rubbing of it. So that is very much at stake here. But not only that, but also Law's devil fruit, the Opi Opi no Mi, which Blackbeard has the ability to take. And if he does take that and then forces somebody to use the perpetual youth surgery on him, then he's immortal. But this also goes back to the cover page where Pudding had been kidnapped, and like I said, it's very likely that Blackbeard is behind that, and he's taking Pudding so that he can awaken her third eye ability, so then he'll have a method to read these poneglyphs, which I assume he doesn't have yet. Not like everybody has a Robin in their crew. Chapter starts with the continuation of Blackbeard versus Law, and it takes up roughly half the chapter. Blackbeard uses a named quake attack, Grash, after being surprised by the fact that Law is now awakened. Law uses several awakening attacks in this chapter, including Shockwill. Answering to Alger's question if they should go back to the ship after Shockwill, Blackbeard says, nonsense, straightforward is the only way, for I'm Blackbeard. Q attacked them with apple bombs, but was surprised by Shachi. Last thing we see is Blackbeard using Black Vortex. So yeah, this is pretty awesome actually. Like, we see the extended fight between Blackbeard and Law here, and Law is pretty much defeating Blackbeard. Now, not completely, of course, but this fight is going to comprise of like 2 rounds, I suppose, as we can see here. And in the first round, Law and the Heart Pirates are pretty much winning, surprisingly. And I really like the way that Oda is doing this. I myself, and I'm sure many of us, have counted out the Heart Pirates here. More so the rest of the crew rather than just Law, but the rest of the crew is holding their own here, as we see. But Law is really giving it to Blackbeard. Like, as it says, he's hitting him with the Shockwill, and he's like piercing him right through the chest, similar to what he did against Big Mom. And Blackbeard is even giving like a similar reaction to it that Big Mom did. Like, he definitely is taking like round 1 here. But considering the sequence is ending with Blackbeard using Black Vortex here, I'm assuming he's ultimately going to take the rest of this fight here, because he kind of has to, you know, for the sake of the story going forward. But before we go into the Pudding stuff, let's just go more into the dialogue from this sequence. Teach tells Law that he can try to escape if he wants, but that he won't be able to. The guy in Law's pirate heart mask is called Hakugan, and Law orders him to take command of the Polar Tank submarine. Q thinks Stronger is dead when he sees that Law is cut in half. So I'm assuming that Law just used amputate here, not literally cutting him in half like severing tissue, but using the magical properties of the fruit to like split him. The Heart Pirates are experts experts at fighting at sea, having been born and raised in the cold waters of the North Blue. Beppo has a very good ear. It is he who tells John Bart where Augur is at 3 o'clock to help Law. Law says that if all of Teach's commanders are devil fruit users, that means that they are weak to water, and Teach tells him that the benefits outweigh the limitation, and that this is the essence of the devil fruit. The Blackbeard pirates did not expect the Heart pirates to be so strong at sea, and they fear that they will sink their ship. I mean, they are in a freaking submarine after all, come on. But now let's go into the pudding stuff, because in yesterday's spoilers, we found out that Kuzan is in fact working with the Blackbeard pirates as advertised by the Gorosei. And it was also him that invaded Chocolate Town, froze it over, and kidnapped Pudding for the sake of the Blackbeard pirates. And we're seeing her on their ship here. And she says if Mama was still alive, there won't ever be another word coming from that mouth of yours. And the Blackbeard pirates say, ha ha ha, right now we're literally fighting the guy who killed Big Mom. If the old legends just laid around taking up space, then how can the era ever progress? So yeah, we talked about this yesterday, and she is saying that if she was still alive, and I don't know if this is like necessarily confirming that Big Mom is 100% officially dead. Like, I don't know if Pudding has a Weaver card that she can confirm with. It was never shown before, and I don't think it's being shown in this chapter either. So either she's kind of just saying that, or this is Oda confirming it. But this is One Piece after all, and it's really hard for characters to die, so I really wouldn't be surprised if Big Mom ultimately comes back, but I would be cool if she was dead too. Aki Inu says that they should wait to see what happens with the battle between Law and Teach before acting, and that being the fleet admiral is very frustrating. So yeah, we went over this yesterday as well, and it's like, how does Aki Inu know that Blackbeard is fighting Law right now? Long story short, my theory is that Kuzan and Aki Inu are both a part of SWORD, and that Kuzan is currently undercover, infiltrating the Blackbeard pirates and feeding information to Aki Inu. Bonnie used her power on the group. She's now a kid. Jinbei also becomes a child, like the SBS version. Chopper is old and Luffy is 70 years old. So yeah, this is picking up from the previous chapter where Bonnie was like freaking out when Luffy and them were about to attack the police pacifista Kuma thing. And she was like, no, that's my daddy. And I guess this is her like using her powers in response to that. And apparently we're seeing Jinbei like the SBS kid version, and then old Chopper, and then old Luffy of a certain future version. But Luffy has like longer hair in this chapter. He looks kind of funny. So let's go more into dialogue of this sequence. The pacifista has stopped moving and looking for Luffy and the rest because they've changed their appearance. Jinbei says that Kuma was the evil king of the Sorbet Kingdom who was expelled by his people and became a pirate. Kuma then joined the Revolutionary Army and was arrested by the Navy and sentenced to death. However, Vegapunk was impressed by his physical strength, and in exchange for being able to experiment on him and make clones, they allowed Kuma to return to sea as one of the members of the Warlords. Bonnie says that she understands that he participated in the clone project, for that he was a warlord, but that turning him into a cyborg was the same as a death sentence. Bonnie says that her father was not a tyrant and that he hated the world government, and that there was no way that her father would work with them, that they must have forced him somehow. Bonnie says that Kuma told her that he belonged to a special race, and that's no reason for them to experiment on him like they did. Luffy agrees with her. Chopper wonders, a special race? So yeah, this is the big reveal on Kuma here. First of all, we're like getting more into his whole evil tyrant stuff, which I think Perona initially talked about. And as we got more into Kuma's character as the story went on, we realized that like, okay, that's probably BS. He's not really an evil guy. So it seems like this was more lies and propaganda by the world government, because that's nothing new to them. And it probably goes more into his special race here, because we saw that they took out all the Lunarians. So he's probably like a similar race to them. Like, he may or may not come from space or whatever. We saw that Kaido and King, a Lunarian, was being experimented on. Pretty sure Vegapunk, or at least one of his laboratories as well. So this fits into Vegapunk's whole thing as well, and why he's so interested in Kuma, as we've seen. But now we're going over to the other group and what's going on with the Vegapunk Shaka, the Punk One. Usopp's group arrives at lab phase on Egghead. Lilith tells them that they need to change before entering. Sanji wears a Hawaiian shirt like Jinbei. All the others have futuristic outfits. Vegapunk Lilith says that Vega Force 1 uses the engine on its back as a propellant and an anti-gravity device to fly. Frankie freaks out. Unfortunately, the Vega Force 1 only works on Egghead because of its special atmospheric conditions. Their goal is to make it usable anywhere. Okay, so that's big, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be the next upgrade for the Straw Hats. Probably Frankie as well. Like, we're probably going to see Frankie flying, like, freely after this arc or at the end of it or whatever, but I also think it would be pretty cool if he applied this to the Sunny. I mean, obviously you can kind of like lie already with the Kude burst, but it's possible that he might eventually just get it to the point of where it can just straight up fly, the way that Uranus is speculated to be able to. I mean, that would kind of defeat the purpose of, you know, being a pirate on the sea and everything, but, you know, this series isn't really that traditional anyway. The Egghead laboratory called Lab Phase is above the clouds. On the ground is the Faverio Phase, which is the area where the workers and researchers live. The clouds are the same as those of Skypiea, both the land and clouds and the sea of clouds. Frankie is amazed, and this is the first time he has ever seen them. So now we're going into the final sequence of this chapter, and somehow Vegapunk is talking to Dragon, Luffy's dad, leader of the Revolutionary Army. But it's the Vegapunk #1 Shaka. And he says, being a genius also means that you can see your own future. And Dragon says, what do you mean, Vegapunk? And Vegapunk Shaka says, I will probably die soon. Dragon's like, that's not funny. Don't make jokes with things like that. And Vegapunk Shaka says, I just want you to know that, Dragon. So that's a huge, big bombshell here. Vegapunk knows Dragon, and it seems like they've known each other for a while because they're pretty cordial here. And it's kind of understandable because he was interested in Kuma, and maybe that's how he got to Dragon, because, you know, Kuma being a part of the Revolutionary Army and everything. But it's also possible it goes back before that, like maybe when Vegapunk was in Mads, that's when he started to become affiliated with Dragon, possibly. Or Kuma was a part of Mads or something like that. Or Dragon was, probably not. But another thing that Vegapunk talked about here with he might die soon, it's because CP0, obviously we found out that they're after him right now. They're going to take out all of the Vegapunks because apparently he knows too much. And it also might be tied to the whole Lulucia kingdom being wiped out by Imu. Maybe Vegapunk does know that it was Uranus, and maybe he can reverse engineer it or something, or already has. But also maybe they know that he is talking to Dragon and the Revolutionary Army here, possibly. But the fact that Vegapunk is talking about dying, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually does. Like, he gives the Straw Hats and the audience like super valuable exposition, gives Frankie everything he needs, and then he just winds up dying. Shortly after being revealed. But yeah, Zoro's saying this is a government island. If they've been caught, then who's going to save them? And Brooks says, I was thinking the same thing. Do you want to drink some black tea? And then suddenly Caribou pops out and he's like, hey guys. And Zoro's like, oh, you're still here. So yeah, we saw Caribou like somehow snuck onto the Sunny inside of a barrel after Wano back in chapter 1060. And then 1061, like during the whole scuffle with Vegaforce, he kind of like came out of the barrel, I guess. And now he's like revealing himself to the crew. And he says, wait a minute, I did say I will go anywhere after I escaped from Wano, but not here. This is a government island. And Zoro's like, oh yeah, you took care of our captain. Thanks. Now get off. So he's referring to, I think back in chapter 1021, one of the many times after Luffy was defeated by Kaido, he was like exhausted and Caribou had all of this food and he gave it to Luffy so he could recover. But now Zoro's kicking him off the ship and Caribou's like, I'll remember this, your freaking crew. So now we're cutting over to the laboratorium with Sanji, Frankie, Nami, Usopp, and Robin's group. And Usopp's like, the stairs are moving, and Nami says the stairs are floating from the surface, and Frankie's like, what kind of technology? What's the energy source? And Vegapunk says that the energy source of this island is fire. Fire can be converted into any form of energy. Frankie says, so you have many resources. And Vegapunk says, I'm still searching about what kind of resource can be burned, converted into. If somewhere in this world the unquenchable flame exists, we can probably create a sun. Frankie's like, a sun? And then suddenly she like walks through the wall, because I guess they're not accustomed to like their projections yet, because we saw Luffy and his group had already encountered them. So now there's like this unquenchable flame thing that exists, which I guess is going to be a bigger part of the backstory of the One Piece world. So all the Straw Hats advance into Vegapunk's lab here, going through the walls, and they hear Edison's voice. Edison, who is the third Vegapunk, which is the thinker. And they suddenly encounter the fourth Seraphim, Jinbei. He's like sitting in front of like the Seraphim tank that says like 4 and that it's 98% complete. And this looks exactly like the child Jinbei sketch that Oda made, wearing the gi and everything, but just like the other Seraphims, he has the Lunarian wings and the flame behind him, and he's just like immediately attacking them here. And Frankie's like, why are you here, Jinbei? And Robin's like, but still, doesn't he look younger? And he seems different. And Usopp's like, Possibility 1, that is Jinbei's son. Nami's like, possibility 2, Jinbei's being turned into a kid. And then Sanji's like, no, there's possibility 3. Someone looks like him. He has wings. I also feel something strange in his presence. And then the Seraphim Jinbei just starts attacking them, like firing off a laser, which we saw that they are capable of. And Nami tries to fight back against him. He winds up grabbing Nami by like the throat. And Sanji's like, that would be the death penalty, even if it is you, Jinbei. And Robin's like, I agree with him. That is unforgivable. And she creates like the giant version of herself with like multiple hands. And they all go after the Jinbei Seraphim, but he counters by like manipulating water, like, you know, fisherman karate. And Usopp even attacks him with a special attack Green Star Skull. But it doesn't really do much, and Jinbei just grabs Usopp as well. And it comes to Frankie like about to fire off a radical beam, but then suddenly Edison comes in and he's like a robot. And he's like, evade that. But then he notices that Frankie used the beam and he's like, oh, he used the laser beam? Who is that guy? That was close. It's like Seraphim is still just a kid. We haven't gotten into experiment with his laser. And then after this, we're introduced to the 4th Vegapunk, which is Pythagoras. He's like the wisdom aspect. And it's difficult to make sense of this sequence by just reading the dialogue here, but they're like essentially going over the combat data like in real time. But then eventually we're introduced to the 6th Vegapunk, which is York, and that's like the greed aspect of Vegapunk. And this looks like a cross between like Nami and Corona, I guess. And she just eats like tons and tons of food, you know, like Luffy and Bonnie do. But she also becomes obese just like Luffy, but then could just absorb the food and become thin again. But then eventually the Straw Hats run into Shaka, the 1st Vegapunk, which is like the good aspect of him, the guy with the Daft Punk helmet. And we're like fully seeing him here for like, you know, standing forward for the first time. And he's wearing like this jacket thing too. And he says, stop it, Seraphim, return at once. And Usopp's like, he doesn't move? Shaka says, Edison, Lilith, Pythagoras, you have enough of this, right? And Shaka's like, so you are the Straw Hat Pirates. Good. And then Sanji says, yes, we are. What's with this floor? Why do our shoes keep sticking to it? And Shaka says, I can control every magnet inside of Dom's shoes in this laboratory. And Robin says, so you mean resisting is futile? And Shaka says, I can't trust pirates that easily. So yeah, the futuristic clothes that they have all had those boots that like fit to everyone's unique form. And it turns out that those boots were special because they're also kind of like handcuffs in a way because they lock to the floor. This reminds me so much of the movie Face Off, which I'm sure some of you have seen, but like when Nicolas Cage, who is also John Travolta in this moment, eventually goes to prison, they have like these metal boots that they wear that like magnetically lock to the floor. I wouldn't be surprised if Oda was inspired by that. But Usopp's like, so you have 2 Vegapunks, right? The woman Vegapunk and the announcer Vegapunk. And Shaka's like, yes, I'm also Vegapunk. And Usopp's like, does that mean that I am too? And Frankie's like, of course not, you dimwit. And Shaka says, did you see this island as a future? And Frankie says, well, there's monster mecha just like in the future, like the Vega Force 1, the island conditioning. That was incredible future. And Nami says, well, I've never seen any kind of this scenery in the city too. And Frankie says, what kind of incredible technology do you use? I want to see it, not as an enemy. And Shaka says, this is the past. Then we cut to Luffy's group and they're like rummaging around the garbage slash scrapyard of this place. And Luffy's like, look, Chopper. And Chopper says, didn't that look rusty for you? But that was real steel. Bonnie's like, what is this? Is this one moving? Jinbei says, even if it once moved with future technology, didn't it look ancient? And we see them encounter like this massive robot thing. It has pretty much like the same horns as the skull from Onigashima, but it has like a similar layout to that one axe wielding guy from Moria's zombie army. And then we hear like Frankie talking to Shaka, and Frankie's like, you know, what do you mean the past? And Shaka says, for example, there's some place like Egghead, a kingdom with advanced civilization, existed 900 years ago. Will you believe it? So yeah, this was like the big reveal that we got in the original spoilers, that Egghead is not the island of the future. It's actually the island of the past, because all of this stuff existed during the Void Century, because he says 900 years ago, and that's when it was. So yeah, what we've been speculating about with Vegapunk was pretty much true. Like, he reverse engineered all of this technology. Like, he just didn't come out with it from scratch. And this very likely has something to do with what Emu did. Like, Emu wanted to erase this technology from the world, which, you know, she / he successfully did. And maybe that's why she wants CP0 to take Vegapunk out, because now that they have the Seraphims and he knows all of this stuff, he's just too much of a liability. The pirates found shocking things. Frankie asks, what's the meaning of this? That once in the past, this kind of futuristic city existed. And Shaka says it's just a theory, but in the archaeology world, there was once a man who risked his life to find out about that kingdom. Then he found a machine that matches its manufacture date with his theory in a certain place. And Robin says, is that machine from the Void Century? And Shaka says, how much do you know about that? All I remember about this is that it's a painful story. 22 years ago, your birthplace Ohara is destroyed with a buster call from the Navy. I think it got destroyed because Ohara knew the existence of that kingdom. The Void Century is there was once existed a highly advanced civilization. The history about the battle of the Serpent Kingdom with 20 kingdoms. The winner is the 20 kingdoms. They founded the world government that the world know these days. To make sure that nobody continued that kingdom's ideology, they erased its existence from history. So yeah, that's giving us more insight into what was going on in the Void Century. Apparently the 20 kingdoms that came to form the world government, you know, and the celestial dragons and all that stuff back in the day, they all teamed up to go against this ancient kingdom or the advanced civilization. And that's how it was defeated. And I'm assuming that Emu was behind all this too. She like coerced the 20 kingdoms to coming together and teaming up on them. And as for the ancient civilization, we have theories about who it was. Probably came from the moon or probably comprised of Lunarians as well, but also Joy Boy was in there too. And the ancient kingdom is maybe what Laugh Tale is as well, possibly, or it comes from that. Most likely comes from it. And Sanji says, why are you talking so easily about this? Shaka said, well, it's only a theory. But Nico Robin, if Ohara is erased because of this theory, that means that the government has acknowledged that this theory is the truth, right? And Robin says, who do you think you're talking about us like that? The researchers in Ohara made a theory from researching various important documents. Do you think the government will hear it from a powerful person like you? And he says, no, I'm similar like you too. Even if I work with the government, if I talk about it, I'll be obliterated. Robin asks him, well then how do you know about the kingdom? Every literature from Ohara has gathered around the world has been, and Shaka's like, well, the will of Ohara still lives on. After the Buster Call, he went to Ohara and it became like a burning field because he's an old acquaintance with the scholar leader, Professor Clover. Robin's like, you're Professor Clover's friend? He says he was very interested in those 100 void years. I've known him as an adventurer that gathers every literature around the world. He's been repeatedly captured and imprisoned 10 times by the Navy, but still he became famous as the #1 archaeologist in the world. He then gathered every scholar in Ohara. Then Ohara became the sanctuary for archaeologists. When I went there, I can't believe they even burned the Tree of Knowledge. I was surprised. Then when I went into the lake in the central area, I found a lot of literature down in there. Seeing their island is on fire because of the Buster Call, the scholars are trying to stop that. They died to protect the remaining fortunes for the future. So yeah, we saw in the Ohara flashback that as it was being bombarded from the Buster Call, the scholars in the Tree of Knowledge were like throwing all the books out into the water and everything so that they wouldn't get burned. And it turns out that that wasn't all for naught. They did survive. And there's more to it as well. I mean, we talked about it in yesterday's spoilers, but we're getting way more insight into it here. And then Robin says, Ohara did try to expose that kingdom just as you predicted. And Chaka says, I see. Then it was really the truth. Robin says, do you know what happened to the literature in the lake? And Chaka says, that time I wanted to bring it to Punk Hazard, but my plea to the higher ups fell for deaf ears actually. That day I encountered those guys. Then we see 22 years ago in Ohara in West Blue, months later after the Buster Call incident. And we see Vegapunk here. And he looks weird with like this weird elongated alien-esque head thing. It's very bizarre. And Vegapunk says, who are those guys in the ruins? Is it giants? And then we see these giants and they're like, pull it up. And Vegapunk says, why are giants here? What do they do? Do they know the value of those books? And Dragon's there. And he's like, it's been a while, Vegapunk. I can recognize you by looking at the standout hair of yours. And Vegapunk's like, Dragon, why are you here? Dragon says, that's my line, Vegapunk. Your head became larger than before, huh? I was Clover's acquaintance. And Vegapunk's like, so you too, huh? I knew him when he was a rough guy who traveled around the world. To label him as someone who tried to destroy the world is unbelievable. That must be some information manipulation. And apparently this was Dragon when he was 33 years old. And this was when Vegapunk was 43 years old. And Dragon says, are you interested in those giants? I just checked it earlier. They're not bandits. They came from Elbaf. They know the value of those literatures. Their captain is a strange guy with a bandage covering his body. He said, I won't let the assets that Ohara left erase from history. You guys from the world government didn't realize its value, so I'm glad they didn't destroy it. Vegapunk says, wait, I'm not. And Dragon's like, I'm tired of hearing it. Even you became the government's lapdog. Even though we, the Liberation, invited you, you rejected it. And Vegapunk's like, don't be ridiculous. Even with my wisdom and technology, what can your poor army make? And Dragon says, I know, you're still a blunt guy as usual, huh? Vegapunk's like, world government is a massive organization, especially the Navy. There's a lot of people who can understand me. Don't lose your objective, Dragon. Dragon says, I know, but with this incident, this really made me angry. Dragon says, in the name of the law, they beat up with violence those powerless researchers just because they have unreasonable opinions. Dragon says, I will make any army that can fight it. Vegapunk says, you who despise violence? Dragon says, just see it, Vegapunk. I will change the world. I won't let Clover's death and the will of Ohara go in vain. And then we come back to the present, and Shaka says that year, Dragon along with Emporio Ivankov and Bartholomew Kuma made the revolutionary army that shocked the world. So yeah, like we found out yesterday, Dragon formed the revolutionary army because of what had happened at Ohara. But apparently before this, he had like his own small prototype version of the revolutionary army or something, because it says that he tried to invite Vegapunk to it, but Vegapunk was like, no, rather join the world government, which totally makes sense because Dragon's group was poor and couldn't facilitate Vegapunk to the level that he needed. But also I guess Vegapunk didn't really know about the Void Century stuff yet because he hadn't read these books at that time. So then Shaka says the literature of Ohara indeed did not fall into the government's hands. Because I'm very interested in it, I secretly went to Elbaf. They let me read all of the documents. In other words, I read all about Ohara, the secret of the world. It's all inside of my head for progressing my research. And Robin says the name of that giant's captain is Saul, right? And Shock says right now he is hiding. No one will disclose his whereabouts. And Robin says, thank you, Dr. Vegapunk. Please don't let Ohara's battle go into vain. And Shaka says, I'm an ally for every scholar. That is my nature as a researcher. Then he says, follow me. There are some things I want to show you. So yeah, we found out yesterday as well that Saul survived the attack on Ohara, but more so being frozen by Aokiji. So it's like, yeah, Aokiji did the right thing. He allowed Robin to escape and he let Saul live as well. And Saul, you know, finding out everything about what Ohara was doing and what the world government was actually doing, he got this group of giants together, took all of the books from the water that they threw out of the tree, and then took them all to Elbaf, and now he's still alive, which is awesome because he's also a D, Jaguar D Saul, so like that still needs to be explored. So then we go to the Egghead Fabrio phase, and we're picking up with Luffy's group here. And he says, oi, there's no place to ride it, Chopper. And Chopper says, I see, so it's an automatic type. Well then, move, robot. So this is picking up from the end of the previous chapter where we saw them coming into contact with like that ancient robot thing. Maybe it needs a password. And Luffy's like, no, it probably has a name. Maybe call its name to move it. Move, Robonosuke. And then suddenly the robot explodes. And then we see Vegapunk and he says, please help me. Darn it, it still failed. Someone please help me. While I'm warping, the space is distorted. And Luffy says, what's with this guy? His situation is just like Kinemon. I'll help you. Vegapunk's like, I'm drowning. I'm very sorry. You are Dragon's son, right? I knew you'll come. Welcome. And Luffy's like, hey, Gramps, are you floating? And Vegapunk says, I'm very happy you're fine. And Bonnie's like, Vegapunk. And he says, you wear it too, right? There's a hover function in those shoes. Push the side button while you pull down the lever. And Luffy's like, push it down like this. And Vegapunk's like, yeah. Luffy's like, oh, I flew too high. So I guess he's going up in the air along with the rest of them. And Vegapunk's like, please help me. And then we see what Vegapunk looks like. And it says, Dr. Vegapunk, world-renowned genius, special science group team leader, humble genius researcher appears. So like I talked about in the previous video, I expected Vegapunk to pretty much look like this. He looks like a traditional, you know, old scientist guy. He kind of looks like Einstein, but like, you know, manga Einstein. And he doesn't have like the crazy head that he had in the flashback in Ohara with Dragon. He has like a half of an apple thing, and it looks like the top of his head's cut off as well. Maybe that could be in reference to like the apple dropping on Newton or something. But and Bonnie asks, what happened with your head? Isn't it more larger than a light bulb? And Vegapunk says, because it's grown quite large, I cut it. And she says, you can cut it just like cutting a hair? And he says, well, when we last met, my body size grew as large just like giants. And Shinpei says, I've heard rumors that he's a large guy. Bonnie says, so it's just like a balloon. Vegapunk says, no, the truth is I ate the brain fruit. I am the Brainiac Man. With it, I can remember every tiny detail of knowledge. The brain is getting bigger and bigger with the data capacity. After all, I was born as a genius with unlimited data bank in my brain. So yeah, we went over this in the previous spoilers, but like this is the secret of Vegapunk essentially. He ate the friggin' brain fruit. And on top of that, he was born a genius. So put these two together and he has like hyper photographic memory with an unlimited data capacity. But the drawback is that it keeps like growing, because we saw in the flashback with him and Dragon 22 years ago on Ohara, his head was like largely grotesque. So apparently it got so big since then that it was like the size of a giant. and he cut it off. And we're gonna find out like what he did with it and why he has the apple. Vegapunk says it has grown into the world's largest brain and still continues to grow. And Luffy's like, even now? I don't see any change at all. Chopper says, that was incredible. As a researcher, are you strong too, Vegapunk? And he says, of course. And Luffy's like, old man, you cut your head. Does that mean you became stupid? And Vegapunk says, don't underestimate this genius, you brat. This apple is an antenna. See the top of the island? On the back side of the giant egg, there's Punk Records written on it. That was a hanger for my brain. And Luffy's like, isn't it too large? Vegapunk says, even if I am apart, this antenna will connect to it via psychic waves, so there's no problem. So yeah, we also found this out before as well, that like Punk Records, it's a big egg thing, is holding his brain. Like that's how big his freaking brain is. And the apple thing that he has on his head is an antenna, and he can like Wi-Fi to it. Vegapunk says, earlier you guys have met with a girl named Vegapunk, right? That was my clone. There are 6 of them on this island. Each one is an expert in necessary elements. 6 people combined have the same personality as me, but the labor force is 6 people. And Luffy's like, what's that supposed to mean? And he says, it means one day I synchronize their experiences and knowledge through Punk Records. Their personality and duties are separate, but each of their experience is worthwhile. And Vegapunk says, consider it like using the same library. For example, if every person in the world can access my brain, it's as if all mankind has acquired my knowledge. Also, if mankind can reciprocally update the Punk Records, it is possible to create a sea of knowledge far beyond my brain. This brain will someday be shared with all of mankind. But he says, you never change, Vegapunk. You're willing to sacrifice for the sake of science. That's why you transferred my father into an emotionless combat weapon. And then she draws like the lightsaber on Vegapunk. He's like, stop, Bonnie. That saber was a failed product. She says, shut up. I just tested its sharpness earlier. Just change my father back. If your answer is no, then Jinbei's like, Bonnie, please think again. If you kill him, you will end up making more enemies than you could possibly imagine. Vegapunk says, just turn off the switch, Bonnie. That beam function is to attract a large number of insects. And then like a bunch of bugs come, and then something happens and like Bonnie passes out and she has like a foamy mouth. Maybe she got afraid of the bugs or something. And Chopper says, are you not worried about her fainting? And Vegapunk says, that makes sense. Her reason to kill me makes sense. I'm helped because the weapon she picked is a failed product. By the way, you guys recently went to Wano, right? Is it true about the rumors that there's another dragon besides Kaido? And Luffy says, oh, you mean Momo? And he says, it's a failed devil fruit that I left in Punk Hazard. It seems he ate it. And Luffy's like, really? It's a failed product? And Vegapunk says, it's an artificial devil fruit that I created. It was created with a large amount of research funds over 20 years ago from Kaido's lineage factor. But his growth won't be the same as the original fruit. And Luffy says, so that's why he can turn into a dragon like Kaido. But it was a success. He could spit fire and is powerful. Even now, he became a guardian deity for Wano. And Vegapunk says, what's the color? And Luffy says, it's pink. Vegapunk, you see? It was a great failure. And Luffy's like, I mean, it's still alright though. And then Luffy looks to the big ancient robot and he says, what about this? Please move it. Aren't you the one who created it? Vegapunk says, no, that's wrong. That's the legendary metal giant that attacked Mary Joie 200 years ago. Also, that machine was probably created far more than 900 years ago. I still don't know the reason it's created. I heard that there's no damage due to the lack of energy. The researchers at the time were surprised with the unknown science it had. No one knows where it came from or what it's trying to do. The world government ordered its complete destruction, but because their curiosity, researchers didn't do that. It still exists here because the information of it is passed down by generations of researchers. The government didn't know about its existence. You guys did well coming here. You must have seen the entrance as a wall, right? And Luffy says, well, I did go rough on it. And Chopper says, no, we just lost. We did go rough into it. And Vegapunk says, well, I'm truly sorry for that experience.
So then it cuts over to the other group that's with Shaka, and he was pretty much telling them the same exact thing that the original Vegapunk was telling to Luffy's group.
And Robin says 200 years ago, that year is the exact year when discrimination against fishermen and the government started. Frankie says, so that robot climbed through the red line? And Shaka says, probably. We created Vegaforce 1 based on everything we learned from it, but there are things that I can't replicate with my science. I can't believe it was a machine soldier made 900 years ago. And Frankie says, a machine that even you can't replicate? And Shaka says, the problem is power. In the past, there was power enough to change the common sense of the world today. Nami says, but for now, I'm happy Luffy and the others are safe. But who is that girl? And Sanji says, it's Jewelry Bonnie, right? She's a pirate just like us. And Usopp says, so that girl got some trouble. They're like viewing them on security cameras. That's how they're able to see them. So then we come back to Luffy and he says, also, Vegapunk's head is awesome. Vegapunk says, Bonnie, I did some bad things to Bonnie. Luffy's like, oh yeah, old man, you should beg for forgiveness. And he says, what did you know about it, you brat? There's some things I wish I handed over to her. Also, Luffy, it's fate that you came here. Can you take me out from Egghead? And then we cut to CP0, and they say, this is Cypher Pole. We wish to harbor. What an insistent pet we have. We've got some information that Jewelry Bonnie is heading to Egghead. And Lucci says she's an eyesore who repeatedly escapes. We have no longer a use for her, right? Next time we meet, I'll definitely kill her. So yeah, we're seeing CP0 here on their ship entering Egghead Island, and they have their masks on. Like, we saw that they did have masks last time we saw them, like they were on the table, but now they're like straight up wearing them. And this is important because it was said that like only the strongest Cypher Pole members have masks. So I guess that's clearing it up. It's like, yeah, they're a part of the strongest, I guess, or just as strong as the ones that we saw in Wano. But we cut to Pythagoras and he says, Shaka, it's the government ship. It would be bad if they knew we harbored pirates in here. Also, there's CP0 and Lucci is on that ship. And Lilith says, just let them enter. Rob Lucci is an assassin, right? And Shaka says, please relay this to the ship. Just put the Seraphim here and leave. So their blanket excuse here is like they're trying to drop off Seraphim Kuma, but you know, they also want to kill Vegapunk as well. On top of that, Bonnie too. Shaka says, we're preparing to intercept them. We declined their request to harbor. So then we cut to Kamabaka Kingdom and we're seeing the Revolutionary Army. And Lindbergh says, Dragon, something strange happened to Kuma. Wait, Kuba, you're still under repair. And then they're like, is he still under Navy control? And then Koala's like, where are you going, Kuma? He still can't properly move. He lost almost all of his conscience. And then Kuma at this point is like hooked up to all these wires and he suddenly just gets up and starts running. And Dragon's like, what's the matter, Kuma? Where did you want to go? And then Ivankov says, just stay here. From now on, our battle as the Revolutionary Army will start. And then at the end of the chapter, it says, where's the destination? He starts running single-mindedly. So yeah, this is like the cliffhanger of this chapter. Kuma just suddenly getting up, running somewhere, don't know where he's going. It's possible that Kuma asked Vegapunk to program this into him as well, kind of like how he asked him to program him to protect the Sunny. Or this is what Vegapunk wants, possibly. Or it's a third option. But another interesting thing is Ivankov saying that, you know, just stay here. From now on, our battle as Revolutionary Army will start. So it's like, yeah, they're like getting ready to do like their big battle, maybe against Marijuana again or something like that. And they ask him about the incidents where several Cypher Pole ships disappear around Egghead Island. Pythagoras denies any involvement and insists that CP0 must leave. So that's interesting. We didn't know that before. I guess before Lucci and CP0 showed up, there was other Cypher Pole ships that were trying to go after Vegapunk, either to kill him or questioning or whatever maybe, but they were taken out. Now, either Vegapunk's lying and like the sea beast destroyed them, or they were taken out by like that warm eddy ocean phenomenon thing that disrupted the Straw Hats on their way to Egghead as well. Not really sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like that warm eddy thing, because that still needs to be explained. Lucci orders CP0 agents to prepare to abandon ship. Then they call S-Bear. That's how they call Seraphim Kuma, to use the powers of its Niku Niku no Mi to warp all of them to the island. After they left the warship, the Sea Beast weapon destroys the ship. So yeah, this is completely changing what we were talking about yesterday. Now we have much better context of what's going on. See, before I thought the whole S-Bear and the other S stuff was like referring to the Sea Beasts, but no, it's actually what the Seraphims are being called. S-Bear, Kuma, and as we'll find out what the rest of the S are called later on, they designate to each warlord that they're based off of. But it was also said yesterday that CP0 was being teleported to the island, and I thought that was just some Void Century reverse engineered Vegapunk tech that he was able to put into the Seraphims, and maybe they all could teleport. But no, it seems like Vegapunk successfully worked in Kuma's lineage factor from his devil fruit into this Seraphim. So now it could use it just the way that Kuma would, and it's warping CP0 to Egghead, just how Kuma used to use his ability on the Straw Hats back in Sabaody. And as for the Sea Beast destroying CP0's ship, I guess this means that they're like trapped there or stranded there for the time being. But in the end, I assumed that if they really needed to leave, they could just like airwalk for miles. In Kamabaka Queendom, real Kuma uses his power of his Niku Niku no Mi to warp away to an unknown destination. Okay, so we're getting a development on this as well. At the end of the previous chapter, we saw that the real Kuma like suddenly activated and started running somewhere, and it was like confusing the Revolutionary Army as well as the audience. And I was talking about this with Sai in our collab. It seems like he is straight up using his fruit here and warping himself to a location. It seems likely that he's going to go to Egghead, but it is possible he could go somewhere else. Given that we're in the Egghead Island arc, it would be better if he went there, but if he does go there, it's like, is he going there to protect Bonnie? Was that like a contingency that he put into himself, like in case she was in danger, he would somehow know it and go to protect her? Or is he going there to just protect Vegapunk?
or both of them. Back to Egghead Island, Vegapunk reveals to Luffy that his dream is to provide free energy to people all over the world, and that way eradicate wars for power resources. Vegapunk thinks that he can feel energy in nature, but as he gets close to discovering new energy source, his research brings him closer to the mysterious ancient energy. That's why he knows too much. He will soon be erased by the world government. That's why Vegapunk asked Luffy to bring him away. So yeah, it turns out that Vegapunk has a dream of his own, and he also wants Luffy to take him away from Egghead Island. So this is really interesting, right? Does this mean that Vegapunk is now a Straw Hat candidate? I mean, yeah, sure, there's plenty of Straw Hat candidates, but as we know, not everybody eventually becomes one, despite how much it seems like they will. And I don't think it's likely that Vegapunk will become a Straw Hat, but he certainly has some flags for that right now. I'm not even really sure if Vegapunk is going to completely survive this arc, to be honest. I really wouldn't be surprised if he dies at the end, but the energy source that he's talking about is in reference to what he was mentioning in the previous chapter. When talking about the ancient robot, Shaka says that he built Vegaforce 1, his own robot, using the ancient robot as a guide. But there are aspects of it that even he can't replicate, which is its dynamic power source. Because in the past, they had power strong enough to rewrite everything they know about the world today. So yeah, it turns out in the Void Century, not only did they have this crazy tech, but they also had this insane energy source as well, which I guess isn't a thing today. And as Vegapunk gets closer to figuring out how to make it or what it truly is, he has to go into Void Century stuff. And obviously, that's like the big no-no of this world. And as he gets closer to it, Emu and the world government are aware of that. So they're like, hey, can't do that. We're going to take you out now. Luffy says, yes, we'll help you. Your head is funny. Vegapunk is very happy. He says he will go packing with all he needs. Vegapunk tells Luffy that they will meet at the top floor and to bring Bonnie there. Then Vegapunk warps away. CP0 arrives to Egghead Island. Vegapunk's defense system appears and starts to fight CP0. Nami and her group are watching what's happening in the monitor. Shaka orders to release S-Snake, S-Hawk, and S-Shark, and then he gives control authority to Sentomaru. We can see Sentomaru's image, but the chapter doesn't confirm if he's actually on the island. So yeah, this is the other thing that I was talking about. S-Snake, S-Hawk, S-Shark, these are the Seraphims, not the Sea Beasts like I originally thought. S-Snake referring to Hancock, S-Hawk referring to Mihawk, and S-Shark referring to Jinbei. So I guess they're going to be fighting against CP0 here, but their control authority has been given to Sentomaru, character we haven't seen for a very long time. He's the guy from Sabaody who was like commanding the pacifistas, but he was also said to be the bodyguard of Vegapunk, as well as like the captain of the science unit, but I think he eventually just became like an officer in the Marines, but I don't know if he necessarily is still Vegapunk's bodyguard. I mean, I guess he still is if Shock is giving control of the Seraphims to him, so I don't know if he's controlling them remotely or if he is actually on Egghead. I'd really like to see like what he winds up doing in this situation. Like, is he going to help Vegapunk, or is he just going to side with CP0 and then give them control of the Seraphims, which seems more likely, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if Sentomaru has like a face turn in it. But either way, I do think that the Seraphims are going to become subservient to CP0 the way that Kuma is, because they kind of need to be on CP0's side, given how strong the Straw Hats are at this point. We could see CP0 exploring Egghead Island during 2 to 3 pages of this chapter. Stussy knows all the details about the island. She says it brings back memories. Kaku is very excited and runs into some laser traps. Stussy knows the traps but doesn't warn Kaku. Okay, so that's super interesting. Stussy has a history with Egghead Island, which we obviously didn't know before. We don't really know much about Stussy other than she's just a part of CP0. I don't want to dig too deep into this, but I guess it's a possibility that she's Vegapunk's daughter, right? Not saying it's concrete or anything, just throwing stuff out there, but it seems like it could be a thing, right? Atlas appears and attacks Lucci. Shaka tries to tell her to stop, but Lucci uses the Roku Ogan on Atlas, cracking her head and destroying Atlas completely. It seems Atlas is still alive, but half of Atlas's face is broken. So yeah, we went over this yesterday. When Lucci gets in there, Atlas starts going after him and he just one-shots her with the Roku Ogan. And there was some spoilers that was saying that she was completely dead, but I guess she's not. I guess she's still hanging on here, but she's like pretty much done for the most part. And again, I don't know if this is like a good indicator of how strong Lucci is completely, because while Atlas did have like a tussle with Luffy, like he punched her and it didn't really do anything, and then she punched him and sent him flying, but that sequence wasn't really meant for us to gauge like accurate power levels or anything. It was kind of just like a throwaway sequence. If anything, maybe just telling us that Atlas isn't a chump. But regardless, I do think Lucci is very powerful right now. I mean, he's not like Yonko level or anything, but I do think he could probably be like a Yonko commander. I mean, he kind of has to be to make the stakes interesting, because if he's just like a weakling, then like what's the point of all of this? Especially what's happening next here, because at the end of the chapter, we see Luffy and his group carrying Bonnie. Suddenly they come across Lucci and CP0. Lucci says Straw Hat and Luffy says the pigeon guy. So yeah, they're finally meeting here, And at first it seems like, oh, we're gonna get into the rematch. Luffy versus Lucci, it's going down. And I hope it does, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it like doesn't. Like something might happen to either separate them or for Lucci to get some advantage here in some way. And also if they do fight, I know you're automatically thinking, well, Luffy's just gonna wash him completely, because on paper he should, right? Gear 5 should completely destroy Lucci. I mean, he defeated Kaido after all. But if it does come to that point, I think Luffy might not be able to use Gear 5 just like instantly yet. Maybe there's some kind of trick to it that he hasn't fully mastered yet, or he still needs some training or needs more time to figure it out. I mean, he could just instantly go into it. I mean, he hasn't gone into Gear 5 since he fought Kaido, so we don't really know the logistics of it yet, but it just seems like it would be too easy. You know what I mean?
Lucci trying to attack Luffy. Kaku and Stussy stop Lucci, saying they need to get permission from Marine HQ to fight a Yonko because any fight can lead to a war. So yeah, that kind of puts things into perspective. Sometimes I'm like forgetting that Luffy is like, you know, actively a Yonko, you know, like he's literally the equivalent of like, you know, attacking a Big Mom or a Shanks or a Kaido at this point. Because, you know, we're so accustomed to Luffy being the MC, how seriously important or significant he is at this point in the story. Luffy sees that Atlas was heavily damaged, so he attacks Lucci first. Cut to Akainu in Marine headquarters. He asks where Kizaru is. A Marine reports that Kizaru is already on his way to Egghead Island. Okay, so this is another thing that we're getting a serious update on. Originally, we were told that Akainu said that Kizaru can't go to Egghead. Then the second time we were told that Akainu said that Kizaru could go to Egghead. Now it's just he's already on his way. So this is like really exciting. We talked about this yesterday, but like I think this is probably gonna lead to Kizaru taking on Luffy, right? And this is like the next big test for him possibly. Gear 5 Luffy versus freaking Kizaru. And like I said, that's also gonna cause some serious debates because it goes back to the age-old Yonko versus Admiral. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing what happens. But I think this definitely means that Kizaru is for sure going to show up in this arc. And it also kind of lines up with, you know, the Admirals usually showing up to these big arcs, you know, post-time skip. So yeah, in the next chapter or two, I fully expect Kizaru to show up there. And man, that's gonna be amazing. Back to Egghead Island, Luffy and Lucci fight. Luffy uses Gear 5 and Lucci uses his awakened form. Lucci's awakened form is very similar to his slender hybrid form. Lucci's back furs now look like black clouds / flames. He has black clouds of steam floating around his neck, similar to Luffy in Gear 4 or Gear 5. So this is a very accurate description. He does look slimmer, but he does have like these black clouds that look very similar to Luffy. It's interesting, but I guess it just goes into the finer details of like awakened devil fruits. Like maybe they all kind of eventually start looking like the same aesthetic because what they all mutually inherently are, possibly. Or it's just a design that Oda likes. But first, Sentomaru orders S-Bear to attack CP0. Jinbei and Chopper run carrying Bonnie, and they cross paths with the Seraphim. Jinbei is in shock. Kaku and Stussy are busy avoiding S-Bear attack. They don't want to fight back and damage the Seraphim. Nami's group is watching what happens on the monitors. They are astonished to see Luffy's Gear 5. Vegapunk appears before them, and Frankie's eyes turn into hearts when he discovers that this old man is the real deal. Vegapunk asks the Straw Hats what Luffy's new form is, and Nami replies that they don't know either, but she thinks it should be a new Gomu no Mi power. Vegapunk says the Gomu Gomu no Mi has never been recorded in the ancient Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. Vegapunk says Luffy's new form looks like Nika, a god that can only be found in ancient texts. Vegapunk says maybe Nika's name has been erased from history, but as long as people continue wishing for him, Nika's existence will never disappear. Okay, so this expands upon what we talked about in yesterday's spoiler, about how it said that the mythical Nika fruit wasn't recorded in the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense because it was covered up. But apparently just the Gomu Gomu no Mi, just the rubber fruit, which is what it was disguised to be, wasn't even in the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia in the first place. And Vegapunk, of course, knows who Nika is. But he's saying that he was a god, of course, because the fruit has to be based off of something. But he's kind of implying that he like actually existed at one point, and that, you know, people keep wishing for him, so his existence never disappeared. This could mean that Joy Boy was like Nika, the actual godlike being, and that he didn't just eat the fruit, but more so that the fruit was based on him maybe, or that his soul went into the fruit, or a piece of it went into it. Again, that's not concrete. It's also very likely that Joy Boy just ate the fruit and became Nika as well, but it seems like there could be more to it at
at this point. Vegapunk continues saying that everything on Earth is born out of people's wishes, and the same goes for the devil fruits as well. Their weakness is seawater. All ability users who bear that curse are basically living in the future that someone once wished for. Nami and the Straw Hat crew are stunned. So yeah, we also talked about this yesterday. And this is giving us more insight into the devil fruits, way more than what we had before, where it says that like devil fruits are born out of people's wishes. And I don't know if that literally means that devil fruits like came to be from thoughts being manifested, like the tangible fruit and the trees that they come from, or the alleged trees that they come from, but more so just their abilities. And that totally makes sense because a lot of the fruits are just so oddly specific and are based off of like ideas, things that obviously don't occur in nature. So it's understandable that wishes gave birth to their abilities, but how that happens, I'm sure there's more to it than just simply people having these thought entities manifest. Cut to Luffy versus Lucci. They clash while Luffy is smiling and laughing all the time. He's jumping around having fun while avoiding Lucci's attacks. Luffy uses a new attack called Gumu Gumu no Mogura, which is Gum Gum Mole. He turns the floor into a fist that punches Lucci's stomach, making him cough up blood and blowing him away. Alright, so that's amazing. And what I'm taking away from this is that he's not literally like turning the floor to the fist, but he's more so rubberizing the floor, you know, with his awakened abilities, and then kind of just molding it to be a fist. And of course, this is wrecking Lucci. And the spoilers previously made us seem as though this was the fight. It's just he uses this attack and he one-shots Lucci, but that is not the case. In fact, they actually clash in this sequence. And there's even more to it, of course, because this is not taking down Lucci. Yes, it's hurting him and blowing him away, but he's still very much in the fight. Sentomaru appears with S-Snake, S-Hawk, and S-Shark. Seraphim cannot be commanded using the Denden Mushi, so Sentomaru must be there with them to give orders. The level of authority to command Seraphim is the Gorosei, Vegapunk, Sentomaru, and anyone who holds the command chip. CP0 has it now. Okay, so Sentomaru is there, and it seems like he is having his face turn here, which we'll get into, but I also fully expected him to lose control of the Seraphims, and that for CP0 to gain control of them, because like I said, they're just a little too powerful, and the stakes wouldn't be high if they were like fighting on the side of the protagonist, you know what I mean? Luffy stops when he sees Sentomaru and greets him. He's talking friendly with him while he's bouncing around. Sentomaru was picked up by Vegapunk and liberated from his life of poverty, which is the reason he owes Vegapunk a great debt and chooses to fight against CP0. Sentomaru asks Luffy for some. Straw Hat, please take Vegapunk away with you. So yeah, it happened. I speculated that there was like a good chance that Sentomaru could have like a face turn here, and it's happening. And he's fighting against CP0 on behalf of Vegapunk, which I'm totally on board with. Lucci recovers while Luffy and Sentomaru are talking. He then uses Soru to charge fiercely and attack Sentomaru with Shugon, hand pistol. And Sentomaru is badly hurt. So yeah, Lucci getting up moments after getting blasted by Luffy and just hand pistoling Sentomaru like straight through his stomach here. I wouldn't be surprised if Sentomaru gets killed by this, to be honest. It also makes sense because, you know, turn face then die. Lucci says all we need to do is eliminate the commander. Then the Seraphim will obey our commands. Luffy is shocked and angry. Axe guy! And that's where the chapter ends. So yeah, this is so much more exciting than what the original spoilers led us to believe. Yeah, it would have been fine if Luffy just took down Lucci, but like I said, there needs to be some stakes here. It can't just be that easy. And I'm not saying that Lucci's gonna win or anything. Obviously he's not, at least not against Luffy in a 1v1 Gear 5, but he is going to pull some stuff here. And now we have Lucci in his awakened form, who is really powerful, seemingly stronger than what a Yonko commander typically is, right? Or at least right up there with the strongest of the strongest commander. I mean, I'll put in the title or something that he could be stronger than Kaido, but you know, the only other opponent the Gear 5 had is Kaido, and Lucci's surviving here. But then also we have Kizaru on the way. So it's like, things are getting so excited to it. The chapter starts with Luffy apologizing to Sentomaru for distracting him before Lucci's attack. Sentomaru replies not to look down on him because he saw Lucci's attack coming and put up his guard, but he still cannot withstand Lucci's attack. So yeah, this is coming off at the end of the previous chapter where we saw Sentomaru encountering Luffy and Lucci, and Luffy became friendly with Sentomaru, or he like immediately was, because they realized that they were more or less on the same page, you know, both trying to save Vegapunk here. And Sentomaru kind of had like a begrudging face turn in helping Luffy, but at the end, Lucci comes out of nowhere and just hand pistols Sentomaru through the chest.
And that was like the cliffhanger, but it turns out that Sentomaru, I guess, is going to survive this, possibly, because he saw it coming, but he still couldn't stop it. So I guess that saved him a little bit. His guard wasn't completely down. Seraphim attacks CP0. S-Snake attacks using the Meru no Mi powers, S-Hawk uses his sword, and S-Shark punches the floor, turning it into waves. CP0 agents try to fight against Seraphim, but they are taken down easily. Kaku and Stussy don't join the fight. Alright, so we're finding out here that the Seraphims did in fact eat devil fruits, because we saw that S-Bear, the Kuma one, was able to use, Kuma's fruit to send CP0 to the island from the ship, but now it turns out that the others are using their corresponding fruits as well, which S-Snake using the Meru no Mi, which is Hancock's fruit. And this is problematic, right? Because S-Snake is depicted as a child, and the way that the Meru no Mi powers work, Oda probably should have thought about this one a little bit more. And then it looks like S-Hawk and S-Shark, Jinbei and Mihawk, are staying faithful to their counterparts and they don't have devil fruits. And apparently they're taking down the CP0 agents, but I don't think like the main ones, obviously, because it says that Kaku and Stussy don't join the fight. Because honestly, CP0, who isn't Lucci, and the Seraphims kind of need to stay protected for the time being. Like, one of them shouldn't beat each other, because we still need to build them both up. S-Snake points Jinbei and Chopper where the vacuum rocket, and which is the right path to reach it. Jinbei praises her for being nice. S-Snake blushes and becomes very tsundere. She talks like the real Boa Hancock. Alright, yeah, still going into this weird territory, and I hope Oda is able to land this properly. That's all I'm gonna say. Luffy versus Lucci continues. Luffy has the advantage of the battle because Lucci can't hit him. Cut to the lab where Nami's group is still with Vegapunk. So yeah, coming off of the previous chapter, we saw that this was pretty much the story of that fight. Lucci couldn't really do anything to Luffy, like he was playing with him for the most part. Although they did clash at one point. Vegapunk says that Seraphims are the pinnacle of science that he's been able to create, and that's why they are the strongest humans on the sea. However, Vegapunk can't guarantee if the artificial devil fruit can be awakened. And then he gives more information about artificial devil fruits. Zoan fruits are the only ones that can be made right now. Vegapunk can make mythical Zoan too, but they require massive amount of time and money. But as to make paramecia fruits, Vegapunk needs the actual user's lineage factor to create green blood, which will grant the powers. All Seraphim have green blood flowing in their veins. Okay, so we didn't know that before. I mean, we knew about the lineage factor stuff, but the whole green blood, this is all new. And I think this is definitely going to be a thing going forward. Like, I could see other characters like taking the green blood, like ingesting it or something, or even injecting it, kind of like in The Boys season 3, and then they get devil fruit powers from it without having to eat a devil fruit. Could also even be temporary, like The Boys too. But another thing is that it's basically confirming that they got Hancock's lineage factor. And it's like, when did they get this? Did they get it when she was a slave at Mary Joie? Because I think it was said that the Celestial Dragons fed it to her out of their like amusement, right? So that's probably when they got the lineage factor from her. Unless they got it when she was a warlord and they, I don't know, had this thing where they went around and got the lineage factors of all of them possibly. And about Logia fruits, Vegapunk says that he tried his best to create them, but they are so difficult. Vegapunk doesn't say anything about Kizaru's fruit in this chapter. Back to the fight, Luffy uses the Gumu Gumu no Dawn Whip, Gum Gum White Whip, first, and then he attacks Lucci with Gumu Gumu no Dawn Rocket, Gum Gum White Rocket, like we saw in Jump Festa 2023's page. Lucci coughs up blood and thinks to himself the same line that he thought when Luffy attacked him with Gear 3 during Eni's lobby. My consciousness is fading. Lucci blows away because of Luffy's attack. Alright, so that's how that sequence played out. Like we saw that page a couple days ago that was released at Jump Fest, and I thought Lucci was hitting Luffy into that too, but it seems like he was. I guess Luffy just did that voluntarily to perform his rocket attack here, but he's messing Lucci up like big time. Sentomaru tells Luffy to go to the vacuum rocket to help Dr. Vegapunk for him. Chopper also tells Luffy to hurry up and goes with them if he wants to save Atlas. So Luffy goes to the lab with them. Back to the lab, Vegapunk tells Nami's group that he will go with them to the sea and that we see all the Straw Hat crew reactions. Nami is nervous because it will be a huge burden. Frankie and Usopp are very excited. Sanji keeps telling Vegapunk to release the leg locks. Frankie wants that Vegapunk checks Frankie's Shogun and the Thousand Sunny. So I'm not going to get my hopes up. I don't think this guarantees that Vegapunk is going to be a Straw Hat or a temporary one. I don't think he's going to
like become a full-fledged member. I mean, he'll ride with them the way that like Kinemon and Momonosuke were, of course, if he does. I still do think there's a good chance he's probably gonna die by the end of this arc, you know, before he's fully able to leave. But I would like it if he joins them too, because why not? Luffy's group reaches the lab, but they don't reunite with Nami's group yet. Bonnie regains consciousness and goes again for Vegapunk. No news from Zoro and Brook in this chapter. In Egghead City, we see Lucci with some bandages. He is now the control authority, and he's commanding all 4 Seraphim. Cut to the sea. In the last page of the chapter, we see that Kizaru is leading a fleet to Egghead Island. Kizaru says it would be easy for Straw Hat crew to bring Vegapunk out of the island, but things won't go the way that they think. All right, here we go. Kizaru making an appearance in this chapter. Definitely on his way to Egghead, which we already knew, because in the previous chapter, we saw Aki Inu talking to some random Marine back at headquarters, and he told them that, hey, Kizaru was already on his way to Egghead, as per their prior engagement or whatever. Like, he was supposed to go there for some reason. Could be to kill Vegapunk, but also I said that that kind of conflicts with them telling CP0 to do it. Why would they tell them both? But yeah, things are definitely not looking good for the Straw Hats here, because Lucci now has command of the Seraphims, which, you know, have been attacking CP0 this chapter, but now they're going to turn on the Straw Hats, and Kizaru is showing up as well. So it's like either we're going to get Kizaru versus Luffy, or Luffy versus Lucci and the Seraphims possibly, but I think the Seraphims are probably there for the Straw Hats to fight against. But it looks like we might get freaking Kizaru versus Luffy or Kizaru versus Zoro. I think it's probably going to be the former. But it's in the red line. Real Kuma arrives at Redport. Everyone panicked when they see him. Kuma walks towards the world government symbol near the lift that connects the port with Mary Joie. Okay, so that clears up the first false spoiler. Yesterday it said that Kuma went to Egghead, which I thought was likely because we're in the Egghead Island arc, so I assumed why not just go there? But no, he's going back to Mary Joie. And that's hilarious because the Revolutionary Army worked so hard to rescue him from there in the first place, and now he's just immediately going back there with his fruit power. Why is he going back there? Not really sure. It could parallel to the ancient robot that just randomly awoke and started attacking Mary Joie 200 years ago, but I don't know if Kuma's like attacking here, but this could be leading into like one of the final storylines possibly. Back to Egghead Island, Stussy comments that it seems Lucci doesn't intend to obey the Marine's order. He wants to attack Luffy and Vegapunk. CP0 agents block all the ports and the ships on Egghead Island. Lucci is very angry, and he says, I don't recognize Straw Hat as a Yonko. So it seems like Lucci still wants to fight Luffy despite getting beat down by him. And we also see them blocking all the ports so that they can't leave. They started doing this in the previous chapter as well. So yeah, we're probably going to see Lucci attacking Luffy again. In the lab, all Vegapunks finish packing. All they need, we can just see normal bags. The 7 of them will board the Sunny together, but we don't see Atlas in this chapter. Edison says there's one more person on Egghead Island that can help them. However, Edison is reluctant to contact that person, since if he helps them, he can't stay on Egghead Island and will be hunted down by the world government as well. However, real Vegapunk decides to call that person. The mysterious person speaks to Vegapunk in polite terms. We only see his/her face covered in shadow. He/she talks by Denden Mushi. Vegapunk seems confident that this mysterious person can take care of CP0 while they get away of the island. Mysterious person says, I've been waiting for your order. Of course I will help. Okay, so this is super exciting, and I have no clue who this is. Maybe some of you will know in the comments, let me know, but man, this is exciting, right? Apparently there's already someone on Egghead who's so powerful that they can take care of CP0, meaning that they're equal to or greater than Awakened Zoan and Lucci. And that's a pretty exciting prospect because that would mean that they're like in the top 10 strongest in the series right now, right? Something like that. Of at least characters who are alive. And then it's saying that they can't stay on Egghead because they'll be hunted down by the government as well. That means that they have to probably go with Luffy as well. So wow, we have even another potential powerhouse joining the Straw Hats. Oh, this is getting really exciting. Suddenly, the Frontier Dome disappears, although no one in the control room did anything. Lucci wonders if this is a trap, and Stussy seems confused too. CP0 uses Geppo to approach the lab. Only Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy, all Seraphim, stay with CP0 agents. Pythagoras turns the Frontier Dome back, but CP0 are already inside. CP0 sees the Thousand Sunny at the entrance of the labo phase, and Lucci orders Kaku to destroy the ship. Kaku is about to destroy the Thousand Sunny with Brankyaku, but Zoro wakes up and blocks the attack. Zoro and Kaku Kaku's fight lasts around 3 panels, but Kaku looks panicked. Okay, so this is it. This was the Zoro versus Kaku moment that we talked about in yesterday's spoilers. And yeah, it was also mentioned that it wasn't a big deal, so that we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves with it. And yeah, it turns out that they just clashed pretty much. But like I said, it's going to leave them seeming strong. Zoro, of course, because he's way stronger than Kaku, so Kaku should be panicked at this moment. But it's also like a massive explosion when Zoro deflects the rank Yaku, which means that yeah, Kaku is really strong, but not as strong as Zoro, of course. Luffy, Chopper, and Jinbei reunite with the crew. Bonnie is not with them. Robin realizes that real Vegapunk disappeared. Cut to another piece of the lab. We can see that Bonnie is chasing real Vegapunk. Bonnie attacks Vegapunk, but he begs her to listen. Vegapunk says that he can't turn Kuma back, but there's a reason behind it. Okay, so that kind of sucks. I was hoping that Kuma was going to get his personality back, but now it seems like he probably won't, but there's a reason behind it. So maybe he can't turn like the actual Kuma back, but maybe his personality is saved and he can transfer him to another body or something. I don't know. I just want Kuma to come back. His story is just so tragic. Cut to Kid's crew. They are approaching to Elbaf. We see a massive island silhouette in the mist. Kid is very excited. All right, so this is something we also went over in yesterday's spoilers, and it said that Veggie was with him, but obviously that's not true. But Kid is going to Elbaf, and it seems like he's going there because of Saul. Now, this isn't confirmed or anything, but the bunk spoilers yesterday may have accidentally told us the truth, because we know that Kid's motivation post Wano is to find the man with the burned mark, right? Because he's going to be able to help him find the poneglyphs. And him going to Elbaf means that he's probably found the man with the burned mark. Or we could just take a guess. Maybe he's going there for something else. But we recently found out that Saul had survived the Buster Call in Ohara, and he had all these bandages on. So that means he probably has burn marks on him, right? And considering all the knowledge that he gained by reading the books from Ohara, but also just having them still, means that he likely knows where some poneglyphs are, especially the road poneglyphs. So it seems like this is all kind of connecting, and also this further sets up Elbaf as being the next arc, and the Straw Hats are probably going to meet Kid once they get there. Cut now to Marine Base G14. Vice Admiral Dahl is arguing with someone on the Den Mushi. She says all ships must head to Egghead Island now. They can't spend their forces anywhere else. The person she is speaking to is Garp. Garp says, "I've just arrived." In the last page of the chapter, Garp's ship arrives at G14 port. Helmeppo and Hibari are crying in the port. Garp says, "Get on, Helmeppo. Let's go beat up those pirates and rescue Koby." All right, so that's really exciting. Garp showing up to G14, which means that Garp is like really close to Egghead right now, and he could talk to Luffy, but he's not going to. And it says that he's taking the other members of SWORD to go rescue Koby, which is amazing because we saw that Koby was taken prisoner by Blackbeard after the whole incident on Amazon Lily, and now finally something is coming from that, and we might get Garp versus Blackbeard? That would be incredible, right? It seems too good to be true, but it could happen, and wow, what if Blackbeard kills Garp? I could see that happening because like I've been saying throughout my coverage of this series, Luffy needs more motivation to go after Blackbeard. Like over the span of 1,071 chapters, you'd think that he would have more motivation to go after Blackbeard. I mean, he does, but just not nearly enough. You know what I mean? So Blackbeard killing Garp would be that. So on the cover page, we see Queen preparing viruses, Judge making his spear, and Caesar creating a devil fruit. Vegapunk and the mystery woman don't appear in this cover. It seems some time has passed since last cover. They wear another clothes and Queen is a bit fatter. Devil fruit that Caesar is creating is black. So this is actually a flashback, and I suppose this is sometime that after Vegapunk had left the group. Chapter starts with a narration from Vegapunk's journal during Mad's time. It's not a flashback, only a text during present time. Vegapunk said that even if the world doesn't accept it, he views her as a real human. Vegapunk said to that this experiment will be their first step towards peace. So this is the beginning of this interesting little side storyline here, where Vegapunk is saying he views quote unquote her as a real human. Pretty sure he's referring to Stussy here, because we found out in yesterday's spoilers that Stussy was a clone of someone from the Rock's pirates. And there were some other unconfirmed spoilers floating around saying that she may have been Bakken, Weevil's mother, but it turns out that that was bunk info, and we're gonna find out her real identity later on. But we speculated before that Stussy may have been like Vegapunk's daughter or something because she was familiar with Egghead Island, and I guess she kind of is. I mean, not literally, but it seems like he created her.
Bonnie turns herself into a kid and pretends to cry to gain Vegapunk's sympathy. When Vegapunk comes near Bonnie, she turns herself again, now into a fiery, buff adult version. She looks bloated like a balloon. It seems Bonnie's powers can make her turn herself into different variations of her future self or something like that. Bonnie knocks Vegapunk's ages out of him in form of sparkling jewels. Then she turns Vegapunk into a baby that can talk, probably thanks to his genius brain. Vegapunk says, "What? The sparkling jewels are my age." He can't tell Bonnie the reason why he turned Kuma in the past, because that reason will cause Bonnie a great pain. That's why Vegapunk promised Kuma he will never tell Bonnie the truth. Bonnie turns and sees a room with a bear paw at the door, and Bonnie walks towards the door and destroys the lock by aging it up. This ability is similar to Shinobu's ability in Wano. Vegapunk and Kuma flashback starts. Vegapunk looks similar to the flashback in Ohara. Kuma wears a white patient clothes with no hat, showing his hair and glasses. Vegapunk told Kuma that a scientist in the West Blue discovered that humans weigh 21 grams less after they die. So 21 grams is the weight of the human soul. Vegapunk also explains Kuma's Niku Niku no Mi ability. He says Kuma's power turns intangible things into something tangible. For example, Kuma can transform pain by turning nerve signals into tangible energy that he could push out of a body. So by extension, Kuma should be able to do the same with imagination, thoughts, or even memories as well. Vegapunk wants that Kuma tries to bring out his own memories because he wants to know the weight and size of human memory. Kuma doesn't want to do that since it's embarrassing, but Vegapunk begs him for the sake of science. So that's wild, and we found this out yesterday, but it's being explained a little more here. So him making the tangible intangible, as we saw in Thriller Bark with what he did to Luffy's pain, but he can also make imagination, thoughts, and even memories tangible as well. So I guess the imagination and thoughts are how he's able to send people to various locations and whatnot. And this whole memories thing is also super important because it's going to be explored at the end of this chapter, but it's also something that we speculated about yesterday before we got all the info here, but we'll talk about it. Back to the present, Bonnie enters in the room with the bear paw at the door. In the middle of the room, Bonnie sees Kuma's bear paw shaped energy. She walks towards it. At the same time, we also see what is happening in the red port. Real Kuma is trying to climb the red line, but he's shot down by Marines. Back to the room with the bear paw at the door, Bonnie is about to touch the energy. Vegapunk says, "Don't touch it, Bonnie, that's Kuma's pain." Bonnie says, "I know my father's ability. That is not pain. These are his memories, right?" Bonnie extends her hand to touch the energy. So yeah, this is what we speculated about yesterday. When we found out that Kuma could make the intangible tangible, we thought, oh, maybe he can do it to his memories or his personality or something. And it turns out that he is doing that. So before he was made completely into a robot by Vegapunk, I guess he slapped his memories out of him. Now, I don't know if this means that his memories can be implanted into like another vessel and that thing will become the new Kuma, or this is simply just like a hard drive that has his memories on it that somebody can experience, but he's essentially like dead. I hope this is like his personality as well, and it could just be planted into something, but there's also a chance it might not be. But regardless, at least this is something for Bonnie to have in the meantime. And this is probably going to send us into a flashback with Bonnie finding out why Kuma did what he did. Cut now outside to the labo. Zoro versus Kaku continued. Kaku is using his awakened form that is similar to Lucci's. Kaku's human beast form has now dark flame hair and a stream of floating dark fire wraps around his shoulders. Kaku uses some old attacks like Bygone, Nose Pistol, but he uses a new attack called Extreme Nose Pistol Spinning Snake. However, Zoro overpowers Kaku and knocks him down to the ground easily, while Brook protects the Thousand Sunny. So yeah, we found this out too, that Zoro was going to make quick work of Kaku, even in his awakened form. Yeah, it's even easier than we thought. I don't even think Zoro's using a named move here to take him down, which would really be insult to injury. Suddenly, it's revealed that the 4 Seraphim came up to the labo as well, despite receiving no order. It's revealed that the Seraphim's personality allows them to react and make decisions on their own to adapt to battle situations. So they come up to assist CP0 by themselves. However, this is not what CP0 wants. Since Vegapunk still holds higher authority than them, Edison and Lilith run out to try to take the Seraphims back. Sanji and Frankie go to assist Zoro and Brook. Luffy and the other Straw Hats stay at the lab. Lucci orders Seraphim to destroy the labo before Vegapunk can come out. 4 Seraphim start attacking the labo building together. However, suddenly Kaku's neck is bitten by someone and Kaku falls asleep. We discover that the one who bit Kaku is Stussy, who has vampire-like wings and fangs. Her true identity is revealed. Stussy is the clone of Miss Buckingham Stussy, one of the Rocks Pirates members. Stussy is the first successful human clone of Mads. She says, "I just made Kaku go to sleep, Lucci, and now I need you to go to sleep as well." So that's wild. So like I said, yesterday there were some unconfirmed spoilers going around saying that she was Bakken, but no, not Bakken. Turns out that she's a clone of this new character, Miss Buckingham Stussy, who was a member of the Rocks Pirates. And she does have like these vampire-like wings and fangs. And I assume that this is a devil fruit, unless she's like some kind of new alien race like the Lunarians or something. Other than that, I assume this is a devil fruit. It's possible it's like the vampire mythical Zoan or something. And maybe he was able to replicate it through the lineage factor of somebody else. I mean, it's even possible that that devil fruit that Caesar had on the cover page is this mythical vampire fruit, possibly. None of this is remotely confirmed. I'm like getting ahead of myself here. I'm just speculating. But it also goes back to what Vegapunk was talking about at the beginning, saying that her is a real person, referring to the Miss Buckingham Stussy clone that he made here, which is now the Stussy of CP0. And she's able to make Kaku go to sleep, and apparently she can do the same to Lucci, which means that Stussy might be the strongest CP0 member too. Brings us to this chapter, where it starts where the last one ended, with Lucci attacking Stussy, but he misses because he's attacking an illusion. Stussy uses a variation of Kami-E paper art, technique called remaining body or something like that. So yeah, this is paper art, one of the Rokushiki, and it pretty much just makes their body really flexible or floaty or bendy, similar to paper, in order to avoid attacks. But I guess Stussy is just using like the power creep new world version of it. While she distracts Lucci with the illusion, Stussy uses a lipstick with sea stone inside to weaken Lucci. She uses it to touch Lucci like Smoker uses his jit. Then Stussy bites Lucci and he falls asleep like Kaku. I like that Stussy's using like her little sea stone lipstick here. And I guess the fact that she's using it as a lipstick and not touching it directly means that she does have a devil fruit ability, which, you know, we kind of assumed. I mean, she freaking transformed into like a vampire, but it's more likely that she has the lineage factor of what Miss Buckingham Stussy's original fruit was, which is probably like the vampire mythical Zoan or something. But we discover that mysterious person with whom Vegapunk spoke with was Stussy, and that it wasn't Vegapunk's intention that she became CP0 member. Stussy can't overwrite Lucci's orders to stop the Seraphim because she's at the same level as Lucci in the authority hierarchy. So that's wild. It was Stussy this whole time that Vegapunk was talking to in chapter 1071. And I guess this is Stussy's full-blown face turn, or just the reveal of her being a face the whole time, because she is helping Vegapunk here, because I guess they do have a good relationship. And I talked about it before, but they could have like a familiar type relationship. Since Vegapunk did successfully clone Miss Buckingham Stussy to make Stussy, he could see her as like a daughter or something. And it's also possible that maybe Vegapunk had some sort of relationship with Miss Buckingham Stussy, which led to him cloning her in the first place, maybe. But we'll talk more about that because it's going to come up again. Lilith and Edison came out of the labo. S-Hawk attacks Lilith before she can give the order to stop, but Zoro stops it. Zoro fights against S-Hawk during some panels. No new attacks, only one big clash. And S-Hawk is in shock facing Zoro's strength. It's like a little appetizer of Zoro versus Mihawk, and I like that S-Hawk is like shocked by how strong Zoro is. I mean, obviously he's much stronger than a Seraphim, who appear to be around the level of Yonko commanders, maybe. S-Shark attacks Edison as he's giving the order to stop, but Sanji saves him. Then Edison managed to give the order, and all the Seraphim stop. Luffy and Chopper are running around the lab trying to find the real Vegapunk, because he and Bonnie disappeared. We don't see anything about real Vegapunk and Bonnie in this chapter. Cut to Sphinx Island. It's revealed that the Marines came to Sphinx Island while Marco was away in Wano, but Weevil arrived and protected the village. However, Weevil was captured by Ryokuyu. Okay, so there's another crazy thing, because I guess this is also Weevil's face turn too, but he failed and was captured by Ryokuyu. So first of all, I guess it's understandable that Ryokuyu could defeat Weevil. Like, I doubt Weevil is Admiral level, right? But it's also possible that it could go back into what we were talking about before with Weevil maybe being like a first gen Seraphim or a clone in himself, and maybe there's some kind of way to subdue him that Vegapunk put into him as a failsafe, or Ryokyu just muscled him because, you know, he is an admiral. Despite us seeing him as like a joke lately with the massive L's that he took, this could be like a W for him to regain face, you know? Now Marco is with Miss Bakken. She asks Marco to bring her son back and to give her Whitebeard's inheritance. Marco says, I appreciate you saving the village, but... And Miss Bakken says, you doubt about my son's lineage? Then just ask Vegapunk. So this is super interesting. And let me also make a correction on a correction. So in last week's spoilers, it first said that Stussy was a clone of Bakken and that Bakken was Miss Buckingham Stussy. And then in the second spoilers we got, it kind of didn't say that. And it made it seem to me at least that Bakken was a separate character from Miss Buckingham Stussy. But now it turns out that no, they are one and the same. That Bakken could actually be translated as Buckin, meaning that, you know, Miss Buckingham Stussy, it is Bakken, or Weevil's mother. So Weevil's mother might have this vampire mythical Zoan fruit and also had some kind of relationship with Vegapunk in the past, maybe, and Whitebeard. Maybe there was some kind of love triangle. Or when she says just ask Vegapunk, maybe it's because Vegapunk used Bakken to make a clone of Whitebeard, and that's why we got Weevil. So they didn't actually, you know, do the deed, but it was more so like Vegapunk replicating him, similar to how he replicated Bakken herself with Stussy. I don't know, there's so much to talk about with this, but yeah, I think this is confirming that Bakken is Miss Buckingham Stussy and that she was for sure part of the Rock's pirates, which we assume so after what Marco told us. Cut to the sea to Kizaru's ship. Kizaru brings some snacks and drink to an old man in the ship. Before that, the Marines tested the food to find out if it was poison.